We'll get underway. Welcome to this full council meeting. I'll open with karakia. Kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangi Māori, kia tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e tai kie. So we have a number of people online. So Councillor Hill, Councillor Greening, welcome.
And Butler.
And Councillor Butler. So I think we're all here either online or in person, so I don't think there are any apologies. So we'll move to public forum. So we have two people registered to speak in public forum. So we have Maxwell Clark and then Mike Bryan, who's presenting a petition on behalf of the Murchison community members. So I will take them in that order. So Maxwell, welcome. Long time no see. So, usual story, 5 minutes, I'll give you a nod, a bit to go if you happen to still be going.
I doubt it. Good morning, Mayor, councillors and staff. I want to say what an insane policy you're trying to put through about the sanitation, which is, in my view, is a core council services to save $122,000. All the things you're suggesting is not respectful of the community or the ratepayers. You need to consider the ratepayers are 30% of your clientele. How would you feel if your mother or father or grandmother had some sense of urgency, which they do as they get older, to go to the bathroom and hell spells the toilet's closed? It's not acceptable. You need to get back to your core services. The same thing would apply, in my view, about the parking in Richmond. It's a poor judgment call. Richmond attracts people because of the free parking. Less than 12 months ago, you said that we'd have a rate increase of 7%. Now it's 8.8, and I'm sure it will rise a bit more. How do you reduce this unaffordable rate increase without impacting the current level of services? And I suggest there's two ways which it can be reduced. The Tasman District Council is overrating the ratepayers last year for the amount of $27 million. The Engineers Department has, for the last 5 years, at the end of each financial year, had a work program which has been funded already by ratepayers. It has not been done. And in 2023-24, only half of the funded ratepayers' workload was undertaken. This amounts to 50% of the ratepayers' funds work has not even been started. It's not a one-off occasion. It happens each and every year for the last 5 years. And what is worse is the excuses that are currently being offered, like depreciation funding. You cannot depreciate any asset that has not been built. And if you want to go to the tax department, they can clarify it for you. So then, where is this $27 million going as a fund? Where does this depreciation show up on your books? Because it's not showing at present. In layman's term, if you pay a contractor in advance to build your driveway and they don't do the work at all, would you expect your money back, or would you expect them to keep it? And that's a simple fact of life. It's the $27 million, which is, if it was taken off the budget, which it should be because it's a constant cost onto the council and the ratepayers, it would reduce the rate take by 2.7% in rates. There's a second issue that I bring up, and it's the dam, the Lee Valley Dam. It's financially crippling this Tasman District Council with debt. The reason for the credit rate drop from AA to A minus is simply associated with the dam costs. It's a joint venture project between Waimea Irrigation Limited and the council. They own 49% of the project. They use 82% of the allocated water on the plains. When the irrigators bought their shares in the company, it was targeted rates, and there's a document here which I'll leave for you to read on page 15 that says TDC may set a policy of targeting rate affiliated members in the zone as and when they require for any particular reason. That's what you need to be doing. Since the cost overruns of $100 million have occurred, they have refused, in my understanding, to pay their 49% of the costs, currently owing the council, or more correctly, the ratepayers, $55 million. Why are the ratepayers being transferred this debt onto them by the council officers? Target them instead, their rates. And in the last term, last 3 years ago at Mapua, at the election meeting, your Mayor King says he would target rate these people. Now, has it not happened? And if you don't believe me, ask the councillors, and there's several councillors sitting at this desk which were there at the time. And lastly, if I may say, is the water quality is just shocking. It stinks. It's unacceptable. And even like Scott says, we're struggling a bit with the water clarity, and there's some complaints about the brown slime on the riverbed. It's what actually has happened, and which you don't acknowledge, is that at the end of the spillway leading down to the pool outside the dam, you've dug into or drilled into a fault. It's currently releasing hydrogen sulfide, which is rotten eggs, the same smell you get associated with Rotorua. Members of the public are telling me and telling a lot of people they wouldn't drink, they wouldn't swim in the polluted river. It's time you acknowledged the problem and dealt with it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Maxwell. Next up, we have Mike Bryan, who is presenting a petition on behalf of the Murchison community. Welcome, Mike. Feel free to say a few words as well. Same rules as Max, 5 minutes, and I'll let you know if you're getting close to that time.
Thanks, Mayor Tim, and all councillors. I'm Michael, and I meant to say to Celia over in the Bay, it's my old stamping ground, Golden Bay, so she'll be saying, oh, God, he's turned up again. But, yeah, I'm Mike Bryan. I represent the Club Murchison, which is the old Lions Club in Murchison. And we had a couple of local residents approach us when it was mentioned that the toilet block at Wakefield, that's the one on the left by the playing fields and the tennis courts and things, opposite Hawkness Bush, were to be closed. But to read from my petition here, and we had about 53 names signed it over the space of a week or so. And, you know, a lot of other people since then, since I brought the petition up, have said, oh, we would like to have signed that as well. But basically, the elderly population down there, and the first port of call, to read from the petition, for residents of Murchison before encountering the heavier traffic into town, is that toilet block on the left. They're an old toilet block, but we've noticed that they're well maintained, and they provide plenty of easily accessible stopping on a hard surface. You're driving in, they're on the left, you can just indicate and pull over, and that's whether you're in a private car or in a heavier vehicle or towing a caravan, as a lot of our elderly are. There's also several cubicles in the building and urinal spaces, and so there's invariably no queue. Towing vehicles, trucks, buses have room to pull in safely, and there's still room for cars to pull in and park without crossing the opposing traffic to get into the other side. And when you exit, same thing. You pull out, stay on the left-hand side of the road, and continue into town. Both the other sets of toilets there are on the right-hand side, the Faulkner's Bush one and the ones opposite the shops. They're both harder to access, especially for elderly, especially after you've driven for an hour and 20 minutes and you're busting to get to the wee shed. When you pull into Faulkner's Bush, it's not that easy to turn around. There's bollards and things, and there's usually camper vans parked there. And so you don't want to park on the grass, and then there's usually, it's not sealed, and so there's usually mud and things there as you walk into those toilets. There's only one cubicle at each end, and they're okay, accessible for wheelchairs, although sometimes with the mud and the water there, I worry about them as well. When you exit, again, you're crossing the traffic before you swing to come into town towards Nelson. And there's often, middle of the day anyway, vehicles parked opposite the bakery and right along there, because it's a popular spot. There's also overhanging trees. I notice occasionally they get trimmed, but sometimes they're hanging down and restricting vision, so when you're looking to exit into the traffic. The same with the toilets. The two more modern ones, the push button jobs up opposite the shops, they are not easy to access. They're off to the right. If you think, well, I'll park on the left and walk across, that's a difficulty too, because most of the way along there is yellow lines, except outside the bakery. And further up by the petrol station, usually that has big trucks parked. When I came through a couple of days ago, there were two sets of trucks parked beside each other. So there was absolutely nowhere to pull off at all. So what we ask is that the old toilets, the ones on the left by the sports ground, remain open for easy access by people travelling towards Richmond from the south. And that's introduced on behalf of the people of Murchison from Club Murchison. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. And so if you'd like to, you can hand the petition to Elaine.
Thank you.
And thanks very much for taking the time to come up and speak to it today. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all.
Yes, hopefully. 42
raise about 130 entries at the moment. So we've got till the end of August to get about 500.
Yeah. Excellent. Best of luck. That'll be a great event should it come off.
Okay. Thanks.
And noting, Celia, just in case you're concerned about the car rally, it isn't the rally. It's just a vintage car experience where they tootle along the roads in normal fashion.
Well, thanks for being so thoughtful, Tim.
Think
about me.
Get some degree of nervousness about car rallying. Right, so we'll move on with the agenda. So next up, we've got a number of minutes to be confirmed. So firstly, the Tasman District Council meeting of the 27th of March. Someone like to move? Moved Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor McKenzie. All in favour, please say aye. 17th of April, Councillor Dakey moves, seconded Councillor Kinnemont. All in favour, please say aye. 30th of April, moved Councillor McKenzie, seconded Councillor Mailing. All in favour, please say aye. Confidential minutes of the 27th of March. Councillor Ellis moves and seconded Councillor Kinnemont. All in favour, please say aye. And the confidential minutes from the 17th of April. Moved Deputy Mayor Bryant, seconded Councillor Dakey. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right. So just before we start, I know Elaine over there somewhere. Elaine's got a report to present later in the meeting, but I'd just like to acknowledge this is Elaine's last meeting before moving to Auckland. Commiserations. But I'd just like to thank you for all the massive amount of work that goes on behind the scenes. I know that when you first started, I shared some degree of frustration over the pernicketiness, is the polite way of putting it, of the I dotting and T crossing that you're responsible for ensuring. But I think subsequent events certainly highlight while it is frustrating, it's crucially important that we get everything that we do absolutely right. And historically, there's been cases where we perhaps haven't crossed the I's and dotted the T's, and that can, even many years later, come back to haunt future councils. So the work that you have done to, guess, upskill, upgrade the way we go about what we do. I know it's very process focused, but it's a crucial part of operating as a council. So you've brought a massive amount of value to this council. I've really appreciated the work you've done and enjoyed working with you and the rest of your team. So thanks very much for the contribution you made, and best of luck with your move back to the big smoke. On with the meeting. So speaking about dotting T crossing and getting things right, the first item is in Leonie's name and is a replication of a previous resolution. So Leonie, I'll hand over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Before I start as well, I'd like to thank Elaine. We do work within quite a rigid legislative process. The Local Government Act is quite prescriptive, and Elaine has done a tremendous amount of work to bring us into line and to document processes. And also, Elaine's also had quite a bit to do with the elections as well, and she's going to help support us this year through the election. So it's a tremendous loss to us, but not completely, not for a wee while. Elaine will continue to help us for a few months, part-time from Auckland. Right, now I'll move on to report 7.1. Now, I presume you've read this. I presume it will be welcomed. So this report is really just about revocation of a previous council decision. We can do that under the Local Government Act. There's provision for that. And this is around 5.1 to 5.5 in the report that was presented to council and passed in the 27th of March meeting. Specifically, it's around rubbish tins, removal from reserves, and the frequency of public toilet cleaning, as well as the closure of 3 toilets. We're revoking those decisions, and we've got the also reducing bedding displays, etc. So part of the rationale for revoking this is also is to appreciate that the public have come back and been quite upset by this. We've had a petition today. We recognise that, we are listening, and also I think we thought we were going to get more cost savings than actually we can. The numbers that were in the report, getting things right, was actually should represent those 3 months, because it was actually going to be implemented on the 1st of April, and that would have only been 3 months for this financial year. So the savings weren't as great as we thought they would be. It does not mean that we constantly are looking at ways to improve service or reduce costs, and it doesn't mean to say we would never take away a rubbish tin, but we are going to be looking at doing more seasonal cleaning of toilets as well as emptying rubbish tins, because we are an area that we do get a lot of visitors. So during winter we don't need the cleaning as much regularly, and sometimes that may mean also rubbish tins won't be emptied as regularly either. So with that, I'm open to any questions, but yeah, the report's before you. If you hear your feedback.
Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, thank you, Leonie, for the report. I think it's relatively straightforward, and I'm happy to move it and support the resolutions. I think we heard the people from Murchison, and that sentiments have been expressed about toilets and rubbish bins in most of the communities I liaise with, and will support what we're doing here. So good move, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brian. Councillor Murray, then Councillor Dakey.
We'll go around. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm happy to second it. I just want to make a comment. I remember when this first came up. So we've addressed the toilets and the gardens and the rubbish bins, but I'm still at loss about the road sweeping and the curbside mowing, which still retained in the old resolution. So I'm sure I made the point in terms of we are a place that welcomes a whole lot of visitors, and the unsightly looking of high grass on the sides of some of our rural roads. And I just had a look. Robinson Road round by Maruri Tip is actually quite dangerous sometimes in terms of that grass that grows in the corner if you're right turning up into the Maruri Tip. So I'm still concerned about that, but this is one way forward, and certainly responding to a lot of the comments that were there that I didn't think we'd lost the first time, but we did. So I'm happy to second on the basis that this does sort the rubbish bins and the other bits, but I hate to see that we stop completely doing roadside mowing and the street sweeping.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Dakey.
Thank you. I was actually just going to second, but I'll say thank you to the CE for listening to this, to listening to the people, and admitting that we don't always get it right, and we're in a rush. We're trying to, so for all those reasons, I'm happy to support this today, and thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie, then Councillor Greening.
Thank you. I will support the resolution, although I think that I'm looking for an assurance that we're not assuming same forever, and that we need to be looking at different ways of doing things. We need to be thinking about encouraging the public to take more responsibility for their own waste. So I'm looking for an assurance that we're always going to be striving and open to making change where it makes sense.
I can assure you that we are. We know that on Dockland, it's a pack in, pack out for your own rubbish. So if you take your rubbish to a picnic area, it's better to take it home. So we will be continuing to educate the public. And continuing to see the usage of our rubbish tins. Sometimes we end up with household waste in those rubbish tins that aren't actually people who've just had an ice cream and thrown the wrapper away. But absolutely assure you that we are continuing to rationalise, because that's part of what an organisation should always be doing. And same with public toilets. We'll be monitoring the cleaning of those as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greening.
Thanks. Just to dot the I's and cross the T's. Just to refresh us, normally when resolutions are overturned, there's a committee of 6 councillors who sign off a resolution for it to be returned and relitigated. What's the process here? Is this being brought by staff? Is that under the standing order process? Just trying to get clarity around.
Elaine will confirm that is the reason, because it's being brought back by staff, then it doesn't require that 6 councillor signed resolution.
Elaine, I'm sorry, Elaine, you were confirming that, or Elaine is confirming it?
Elaine can confirm it as well if you'd like.
Yes, that is correct. A resolution can be rescinded by an officer report. It's not the same as a notice of motion from a member, which does require signatures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make the comment that, and just in the broadest of the discussion, I certainly don't recall it being a rush decision. I think there was quite extensive discussion. I think Councillor McKenzie made extensive arguments for why it should happen, and I think I made some counter arguments for why I thought it wasn't a smart move. And I think a division was called and people's votes were recorded on it. So it's lovely to see that the public's voice has been heard and the councillors are open to changing what I thought was not a very smart decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. So before I put the resolution, I think it is important to consider that the resolution probably wasn't ideally worded. There's some issues around the figures, as Leonie's already touched on, in terms of annual savings versus the 3 months of the balance of the year. But I think there is a continued focus on particularly remote reserves and starting to shift the dynamic that where they are more akin to the Department of Conservation reserves, of which we have many, then that sort of behaviour change may well be something that we look to implement over time. Leonie's touched again on the way that we might better manage some of the cleaning, street sweeping, more seasonally based, etc. I think the other thing is that in 2 years, at the time that the contract renewal for this overall activity comes up for renewal, that I know staff will be seriously considering whether the current structure of that contract, the way it bundles up a whole lot of things into one, may be better done another way. So those considerations will obviously be for the council staff and the next council to consider at the time that contract comes up. So I think what we've learned through this is that these are services that people are quite passionate about, and the different services that we considered reducing. I think this is the right resolution, but I think Councillor McKenzie is also right to consider what we do going forward to try and minimise the cost, maximise the service delivery where it's absolutely needed. And so as we look forward to that contract renewal, I look forward to seeing what happens in 2 years' time. With that, unless you don't want a lot of reply, I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Right, next up, quarterly financial report. All welcome. On page 15.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I see Mike has come up in support, just in case there's a girly question. Over to you, Paul.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. This report presents the summary financial results for the 9 months to 31 March 2025. I will take the report as read, but before I go into that, I'll briefly summarise a few points. First of all, thanks for Councillor Ellis to pointing out error on the table in 5.6, page 21, relating to capital expenditure. There's a minor material item, but I'll send an updated table out by the end of the week. On to the main comments. The results continue to track in line with the reports for the September and December quarters, with the year-to-date operating deficit consistent with a full-year position of approximately $6.5 million over budget. The balanced budget benchmark is at 90%, reflecting this deficit and budgeted loan funding, operating expenditure and use of reserves. The other key points, capital expenditure is at 53% of full year budget, which is comparable to the previous 5 years. And lastly, the capital underspend has helped offset the operating deficit and other flows to associates, and contributes to our net debt remaining under our LTP year-end target of $280 million. So thank you, councillors, and if you have any questions, please proceed.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Brian, Councillor Mailing, Councillor Dakey.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. Thanks for the report, Paul. I'm not sure, I think you were here when the issue was raised in the public forum around depreciation, and was one of the things I was thinking about in the report. I just wondered if you could sort of explain how we've got to this position in layman's language for us, please. Okay.
I knew there was a reason you came to the table, Mike.
In terms of the overall depreciation expense, and there's also the dynamic of a funded depreciation. Mike can probably talk better to the funded depreciation, but as I talk about in the report, we fund about 75% of our depreciation, which contributes to the cost pools that we recover by rates and other mechanisms. The depreciation expense itself will increase. We have cyclical valuations of different asset classes. For example, last year was 3 water assets, I believe, and those will continue to be given an updated value of what their actual cost and value in use is, and which indicates the value to replace. Mike?
So how do we get to be 4 million over budget? That's what I'm sort of struggling with.
So revaluations.
Broadly, the budget was set before the revaluations came in, so there was a noticeable increase in the valuations. A lot of it infrastructure-driven, cost of contractors, etc., which flowed through.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Mike?
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'd probably comment too on the capital budget. And so we talk, when we when we set the budgets, we don't assume for the rates and the other fees and charges that the entire capital budget will be delivered in the year. Consider it somewhat aspirational. And so we assume that we won't deliver 10% of the capital budget in relation to 3 waters, and also in relation to reserves. So we're not overrating to the extent that some people might think we're overrating in terms of having budgeted borrowings higher, and therefore rates higher than what they should otherwise be. We are still working, and I know my colleagues are working really hard to improve delivery on the capital works program. That has lifted up in recent years as we've better resourced the project team. So that sits there. I can confirm for Deputy Mayor Bryant, the key driver in the increase in depreciation expense is always the revaluations. In recent years, we've seen significant increases in the replacement cost of infrastructure assets. That's reflected in those valuations moving up significantly. The money we collect by the portion of the depreciation we fund is used to fund renewals. So it keeps the debt funding of the renewals at a lower level than what it would otherwise be.
It would be useful, and it's probably contained somewhere in all of the financial information we get, but to just even circulate what that increase in revaluations was for the three water assets, because they're a significant part of our asset base. It doesn't require a huge change in the valuation to have a significant impact on depreciation. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bryant, then Councillor Dakey. Councillor Mailing, and then Councillor Dakey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation, look, I meant to ring you, Paul, but there's an error on 5.2. We talk about changes approved in October 25. I don't think we've got there quite yet. So that's paragraph. I did meant to ring you, but I got tied up with another hearing. The revaluation of assets, that happens every 3 years, as I understand it, not every year.
Mike.
For financial reporting purposes, we need to revalue assets when there's been an appreciable movement in those assets. Normally, the revaluation cycle is 3 years, and we don't revalue all of our assets in that same year. So we've done the three water assets are impacting here. Currently, we're doing a revaluation of the roading assets. They'll be reflected in next year's accounts, and it'll be reflected in the annual report this year. So we cycle through the assets. From time to time, for example, we will do a revaluation of the Port Tarakoe assets. It's a special class because of the nature of the port.
So although it's every 3 years, we're actually revaluing some asset pretty much every year.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
And if it's either three waters or roading, it's a big asset.
Correct.
Hence the fluctuation.
Hence, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Dakey.
Thank you, Sir the Chair. We talk about the end of the year budget position being in deficit, and then we've got capital expenditure currently tracking under. How do you project where you're going to be at the end of the year? Is it like, from your point of view, are you trying to still achieve that, or are you putting the brakes on? When you look at that number of that 6.5 deficit, is that number set, or when we get to the end of the year, is it actually likely to change should a project arrive or not?
So that 6.5 million additional deficit is our operational deficit, not our capital deficit. And so you can see the areas in these accounts where we are over budget for operational costs. And there is a proposal to sell some ECS credits in order to reduce that operational deficit at the end of the year. So independent of that, we've got the capital works program. So the capital works program, if we don't complete the capital works program, or at least don't complete 90% of the capital works program, we are typically borrowing less. That's reflected in the finance costs that come through into that operational area. So two separate parts, but they work in tandem.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your response, Paul, to my email queries. I didn't ask about the targeted rates. I think I may have asked this before, because their variance to March is like 850k ahead of budget. Are we forecasting a positive variance to budget in the targeted rates? And if so, how have we factored that into our year-end forecast deficit position?
Thank you, Councillor. So a lot of that will relate to water charges, which we have seen quite an increase in volumes being taken over the last year. In some cases, like I know, we just had recently the Richmond meter readings done. So particularly in the Richmond area, but also other areas, we've had a very large volume increase in water volumes, which are passed under that targeted rate. And also we had the increase in the per unit rates as well this year, which have led to quite a marked increase. And yes, it'll be incorporated.
So Matt, so to follow on, so they'll be reflected in the year-end balance for the closed account that is water, and that may have an impact on the following year's charges should the council, but it'll be reflected in the closed account.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so that the 850K is part of that $6.5 million deficit that you'll see in the next paper. So the forecast is on everything. It spits out a number. So yeah, that is already part of it. It's an offset effectively from that 6.5 million.
Cool, thank you. Anything further, or someone move? Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. You may have capitalised this before in the conversation, but I'm looking at 5.5 where it says the organisation needs to further consider developing a realistically deliverable capital works program that incorporates increased efficiencies. This would potentially require additional focus resources. Then through on it talks about whether we're supportive of that or not, but then it says Council is incentivised to avoid increasing debt through capital expenditure and to defer such expenditure into future years. This approach needs to be communicated and understood by the community. How are we going to get that out to the community, and how is the community going to understand that?
Mike.
Through Mr. Mayor, that particular comment is mine. I own it. The concern I have is that we have these conversations with our community. We put a capital works budget into the plan. We say we're going to deliver wastewater plant X, roading Y, footpath Z. And it makes for a difficult conversation for you at the end of the year if we only achieve 70% or 80% of that. So that's a conversation. I think the opportunity to engage with the community is through the annual plan and the LTP process. And so when we're actually having those conversations with our community, it's getting them to understand that the capital works program is somewhat dynamic. In fact, it's quite dynamic. If we want to deliver more, if you want to get to a 90% delivery, let's say, then you need to be prepared to invest further in the resources, or you need to work on the program and say, what's a deliverable program? So, we don't say we're going to deliver a $90 million capital works program when really with the resourcing we've got and what's in contractor resourcing and the likes, we can probably at best do an $80 million program. So there is a feedback loop and there is a conversation with the community.
And if I may, through you, Mayor, how do we open the doors for that communication to happen? Because we've acknowledged we want the community's input. I believe it's crucial that we take them on the journey. How do we spell it out to them in layman's terms so that they have the opportunity?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think the opportunity comes when we consult on the annual plan and the LTP and we talk about the capital works program. And we do have a level of pre-engagement on many projects with our communities.
And I think it's a crucial role for councillors as well, like in whether it's community meetings, community association meetings, community board meetings, just to highlight the challenge, because every year it varies, because one large project that gets delayed for whatever the myriad range of reasons can be, consenting, land purchases, a whole range of things, has a bigger impact than a couple of smaller projects not quite meeting the threshold. So it's always difficult to manage that capital works program to an exact number. We've put in the 10% that we understand is likely not to be achieved across a couple of the activities. That's another thing for the council to consider. Is that the appropriate number, or should that be slightly more if history suggests 15 is a better number? And then there's that balance between being optimistic and running the risk of collecting more money than you need in a particular year, even though that's reflected in the following year as the catch up happens, or whether you actually take the opposite approach, which is what we did with operational funding last year, and said, actually, we're going to have a more conservative estimate of what we think we're going to spend. So we don't collect the money in advance. Then you run the risk of having an overspend, which you then have to collect in arrears. Now, at the end of the day, the same costs, but there potentially is a benefit to the ratepayer of keeping the money for one more year if you take a more conservative approach. But again, the explanation needs to be really clear as to which of those paths you're setting out on, so that when you get to the end of the year and you're explaining a deficit, in some ways it's a positive because you didn't get the money a year earlier. So it is swings and roundabouts, but a big part of that is our communication with our communities, as well as the organisation's kind of more formal stuff that we do. But good question nevertheless, because it's a regular conversation that we have. Councillor Mailing, happy to move the receipt.
But I've just got
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Ellis before. Councillor Ellis, then I'll come back to you.
Thank you through you, Chair. I just want to say thanks for the report and thank you so much for the explanations that I've had. This stuff makes my head hurt, and I think I get a better understanding every time this comes across our desk, but then again, I always have more questions. I appreciate your commentary on 5.4, 5.5, and it's also an issue that was raised in public forum this morning, and it's something we really have to look at. I'm just trying to get an understanding of a large part of our operational overspend has been maintenance work. And under Joe logic, we haven't fulfilled our capital program. How much of that is interrelated where we have higher maintenance and reactive maintenance costs as opposed to not being able to deliver the capital investment over that time? It's possibly not a finance question, but I'm just trying to get a feel for, because to me they are interlinked, and what has been the impact of not delivering those programs on the operational overspend?
Richard, that's probably a you question.
They're actually not linked. The maintenance is operational costs, so that's kept separate. And we have resources through our contractors in the operational space. They also have resources to do capital, but if they don't, the resource they put in the capital program is not allowed to compromise their maintenance and operational stuff. So we do have other contractors come in and do the capital program, but both of them are separate. So is that the question?
I think the question is, so let's say one of our capital items is a renewal item. So and the reason we're doing it is because the pipeline, let's just say, has got to a point where it's now costing more. So if that project doesn't proceed, we have another year of the reactive maintenance. I think that's the question.
Oh, is that the question?
So if we don't complete the capital program,
thank you for making it clear.
is there another year of the maintenance that we have to pick up? I think that's the question. And Mike's nodding, so I suspect the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. What we want to do is to make sure that our reactive maintenance and our proactive renewals, the reactive maintenance is low and the proactive renewals is high. When you go the other way around, that's when you've got a problem.
Yeah.
That's when we have to really up our renewals so they don't end up so much reactive.
So I think Councillor Ellis's question is 100% on the money. If we don't complete the capital program, and the capital program relates to assets that require reactive maintenance, we have to carry that reactive maintenance cost for a longer period until the renewal happens. So there is absolutely another incentive to ensure we get the capital program done, because it helps reduce the ongoing maintenance cost on some of those assets. Excellent. I think we got there. Right. Very good. Good question. Councillor Maley.
I'm just happy to move, and the issue has been covered.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie, all in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Matt, seeing as you're already in the seat. Next item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In front of you, it's a 2024-25 forecast overspend report. essentially, with the overspend of the 6.5 million that has been discussed, has been talked about, I think, since about September, October, we need to bring this report to you to ensure we stay within our delegated authority that council endorsed probably at the start of the triennium. So that report, this report essentially brings you that forward. It breaks it down into the actual activities where the overspend is believed to have happened. The major reasons for it are around the interest cost and indeed the maintenance costs. I suppose what's not mentioned in the report is what happens next. So obviously it's a forecast report. The reality is come 30th of June and once finance pulls together all the closeout of the financial year, the reality of our forecast compared to those, the reality of the actual point where the plane landed compared to our forecast will become known. When you'll see that is in the activity report that comes back to council where we say how we went against these forecasts. With the upcoming elections, we'll making our best effort to try to get this back to this council for them to consider that. So that's all from me. However, Mike, and I think in front of you now is a handout of an email that Mike sent out around ETS. So I'll pass to him to talk to that before we open up for questions.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Matt. So Mike, if you'd like to speak to that, and then we'll come back to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last night I was able to email councillors, and it was circulated in hard copy this morning, an advice around the market position for ETS credits. And so the concern that's been raised is that the market for ETS credits is somewhat volatile. At the time that information in the email was sent out, that's actually for the Enterprise Committee's upcoming meeting, the ETS credit price had dropped to around $45. When I checked the price this morning, it's back up to $51. So there's been an upward trajectory. Back in January, it was over $60. So there is quite a lot of movement within the market. What I wanted to flag to council is not to be overly concerned, but to note that you may have insufficient unencumbered credits to be able to achieve the $6 million in sales that are proposed. $3 million to offset this year's additional deficit and $3 million for the Diversified Resilience Fund. So some consideration needs to be given to that. Given the volatility in the market, I would suggest councillors might want to give due consideration to agreeing to the sale but setting a floor price. So as soon as the price exceeds, and in my case, I would suggest $55, and then we move to sell the credits. So we actually ensure that we retain sufficient income to meet the budget expectations. I would be coming back to you if we could not achieve that price in the next 3 months. So I would have concerns, but it's quite a volatile market to be operating in.
Thank you, Mike. So should the price hit whatever figure, if the floor price is 55 and it hits 60, how quick is it? Can you literally ring up and sell them? Is it that simple?
Yes, what we would do is we would already have an arrangement in place to sell the credits. We would choose that particular party to do that. I'm likely to be P.F. Olsen's or Jardine's. We would say that we've got these credits available. We would talk to them about selling them in tranches. You don't want the sort of dollar cost averaging is quite important in this. And we'd say we've got a minimum price of, let's say, $55 credit. So as soon as they thought the market was going to reach that, or as soon as the market did reach that, they would place those credits in the market.
Okay, thank you. Open to questions both on what Mike's just discussed in terms of the ETS credit conversation, but also more broadly the paper that Matt's spoken to. So, Councillor Mailing.
Just a concern that I would have is of not meeting our obligation of because we put in the consultation document and we've said rates increase is 8.8, which I think most of us are uncomfortable with anyway. If we don't sell these credits, my understanding from our work we did on this, it would add another 0.5% onto the rates. So that would be the concern if we set that too high and we don't meet that within that time frame. So it's a question for him.
Yes, as I indicated, there's about I think a $10,000 to $12,000 a month interest cost, because we wouldn't be reducing our debt by $3 million. That would have an impact. Whether that was rates funded or whether it was added to a deficit, that would be a decision at the time. Also, you may, as I noted in advices last night, you may choose to say we're going to sell $3 million of ETS credits. That only leaves us $2.5 million for the Diversified Resilience Fund. Then the priority goes to reducing the deficit. That is another option you have.
Okay, thank you. Other questions of either component? Councillor Dakey.
Thank you for that question around. So we've got the ETS credits on this reduction of 3 million, and then we've got the remaining 3.4 to be loan funded over a period of 5 years. How is it that we get to 5 years, just finance for dummies again, because, you know, here we go. Why is it that we are unable to essentially roll that into next year's program? How is it that we end up with a 5-year term of borrowing on that? So for me and everyone else out there.
Mike.
Through Mr. Mayor, it is simply that if we rolled it all into next year, your rates rise would go up dramatically because you'd be fully funding it in 1 year. The decision to recommend it being funded over 5 years is to smooth the impact on rates.
Councillor Dakey. Yeah, so obviously there's a cost to this of the borrowing, and that's that underspend when you're setting your levels, whether we set it high or set it low. And the consequence here is that we're actually going to end up paying some interest, really, isn't it? So it does make you wonder when we set the original budgets, whether, you know, where we put them at. There is a consequence sometimes.
That is correct. There is the repayments and there is the interest on the outstanding balance of the debt.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the resolution. Although I do want to be clear that it's good to get to this point with the report, because we've had a lot of discussions over the past few months about the forecast overspend. I certainly don't recall it being so explicitly explained the risks that we took on when we did the LTP with respect to the budget. And so, you know, for the record, I just want to be clear about that. On the other hand, if we had been more attuned to the risks, then we would have set the rates higher, and so people would have paid that earlier. So, you know, there's a Bob each way kind of thing going on here. So, you know, it is what it is. We have to wrap it up. It's unfortunate that we do have to carry that debt for 5 years, because there is a cost to the ratepayers associated with that. So I think the important thing here now is that whatever lessons we can take from this in terms of the LTP process and setting the rates, we need to take that on board so that actually we don't find ourselves in this situation again.
Thank you, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just want to go to the options in 7.1 because I thought I got over it, but I haven't got over it. So the statement is that if the precedent is if we approve this, then it could create a precedent where budget expenditure is just a process and it's just ratified. If we don't approve this, then we go against the delegation register because it was set up for this purpose. So I guess there's two things I want to acknowledge. One is that we had that horror conversation about removing rubbish bins and bits that we've revoked, but at least there was an opportunity to make a decision to change the course of the path. And I guess that's the one plea I'd asked for earlier, is that the time it gets here, there is no change. There's nothing that can possibly be done that I can see that you haven't already explored without taking key services, closing libraries and all the things that ratepayers want. This ship can't be turned around. So it's an expected delegation, which is unsettling. So I guess my plea is, I'll second the motion, but my plea is that early heads up and operational reports into the standing committees is essential to have an understanding around this table to make the decision early that we are predicting overspend on budget, because I don't see there's a choice in this. So I'm happy to second.
Yeah, I think that point's been well made and made several times. So, and it's good to make it again. So appreciate the sentiment. Councillor Ellis, Councillor Walker, and then Councillor Greening.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Well, I accept what's been said by my colleagues. I'm not going to add to it anymore. I just need some clarification around 2.6 and the selling of the ETS, and it says and the remaining 3.4 is to be loan funded and repaid over the 5 years at 700,000 per annum. So again, we're back to Joe logic. If we're operational costs at $700,000 per annum, that's generally speaking, a 0.7 increase in what we've already scheduled for in the long-term plan. Yep. Yeah, cool. Thank you. That's what I thought we were heading into. So I just wanted to check that one was correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Which is one of the reasons that the forecast for next year has gone from 5 point something to 7. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. Just just to re-endorse pretty much what everyone else has said, particularly Councillor Maru and also Councillor Dakey. I guess for me, it's like, so we've read the report now, which says we're going to put that debt and fund it over 5 years because that's going to smooth out the rates. What would it have been like if it was done over 3 or 4? So we don't get an option. We just get told it's this or this. Is that correct?
Well, no, you have an option. You can, but it's going to, the option that we have kind of locked into the process is over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you could have chosen 3 or 10 or to fund it all in 1 year, but that's an option. This is the option that we have now.
Mm.
This is also the option that you have chosen in terms of your drafting and plan going out.
So you
for
can revisit it
consultation.
post-consultation should you wish to.
That is correct.
So that was what I was getting to. So if we get feedback from our communities and they're really not liking it, there is an opportunity. This is not set in concrete from today's decision.
Not from today's decision, no.
Thank you.
So it is in the draft from the previous week's decision, and then there'll be a subsequent decision post consultation.
Thank you.
Councillor Greening.
Yeah, so consistent with the points that I've raised in the annual plan process and long-term plan process. In my opinion, what council should be doing is more closely examining its operational costs. Those have gone up substantially. You only have to look at the FTE counts that are later in this report to see the growth. If you go back even a few more years, the growth is even substantially larger. Using a benchmark of an 80k salary as an example, 50 extra FTEs will cost you around 4 million a year. So in my opinion, and I've stressed this multiple times, what council should be doing is working within its budgets by reducing its operational costs so it doesn't have to borrow this money. And that's what should be happening, but is not happening because the governance around the table doesn't support that approach. So the ratepayers are picking up the consequences of that decision-making process. I do support the approach that Mike's outlined in terms of a floor price for the ETS. I think it's pretty sensible. One hopes that in our instructions, it's not sell at 55. It's if the price is 60, we take it at 60. But I'm assuming that will be part of that discussion. So I'm I'm calling a division. I'll be voting against what's proposed in this, as I did against the annual plan. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Just in terms of the mover of the resolution, so the floor price conversation. Best overall price was so there isn't currently a consideration in the resolution of the floor price. So I guess we can either do this and then, but it would probably make more sense to include it as part of this. So what's the mover's view on a floor price? So you're happy to include that? Righto, tickety boo, seconder as well. Good as gold, thank you. Anything further? Councillor Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Tim. Just a couple of things from myself in relation to the report on the overspend in relation to resolution 2 and the notes the forecast underspend in the flood protection and river control work. 152,000. The detail is that we received a lot more work and income for this activity and gravel royalties, which someone looking at this will think, well, we haven't necessarily done it. There's a way for me to stop that.
No, underspend isn't right. The reason those two are in bullet point 2 and not bullet point 3 is they are actually predicting overspends for the reason that you just mentioned. We're expecting more, the gravel royalties we sold a lot more. So with that's just incorrect. Sorry, it should be notes forecast surplus in the following 2 activities. So my apologies to that. It's not
well, that was where I was leading with the question. How can we have all this income and then it's an underspend?
No, my bad.
So that needs changing.
That should.
I'd also advocate we need to sell more gravel too. We've got plenty of it in the upper Mocha Way. I really want to keep beating that drum a little longer. And my other question relates to the ETS sales, and I'm not sure if it's for you, Matt or Mike. Do we have to consult on that before we can sell them as part of our annual plan, a consultation, or can we sell them tomorrow if we so wish?
Mike.
I considered whether or not consultation would be required given the nature of the sales and the context of our significant engagement policy. No specific engagement is required with the community, so you can comfortably and safely sell those credits.
Price.
Yeah.
Went to $70 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I assure you, if it goes to $70 tomorrow, we'll be getting $70 for them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And I support using them to pay down debt and then the balance for the resilience funds.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bryant. So I'll just before I put the resolution, I think the point's been made about not wanting to find ourselves in this position subsequently, and that the earlier information comes through about areas of budget overspend and opportunities are provided for governance to have some input, whether we get it right or wrong, as Councillor Murray said, in terms of the decisions we might make around how we might try and claw that back. I think the key thing is it was very clear to me in the LTP budgets we were taking a risk. The quantum was not clear. So there was very general information about if you take the choices to reduce that reactive maintenance, that, you know, you're running a risk. But the quantum of that had been $1 million versus $5 million, obviously has a big impact. So it's always going to be hard to predict exactly where to land. And as I said earlier, I've sat through a number of council terms where we regularly return surpluses. Now, arguably that isn't great either for ratepayers, because in effect you have that demonstrates you have taken money earlier than it is required. So it's going to always be hard to get this 100% accurate, just as it's hard to get the capital budget 100% accurate. And it's a bit of a case of how much risk do you wish to take? How do you explain that to the community that, yeah, this is the budget, but it is a budget and there is a risk always that it won't be met one way or the other. But I think, again, I support the resolution as it's been moved and seconded. So I think it has been reworded. Yeah. All good. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say I won't put the resolution. It'll be called by Robin as a division.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Dakey.
For.
Councillor Dowler.
For.
Councillor Ellis. For. Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill. Oh. Councillor Walker. For. Councillor Shellcrest.
For.
Councillor Maru.
For.
Councillor Mayling.
For.
Councillor McKenzie. For. Councillor Kinnamonth.
For.
Mayor King.
For.
Thank you.
The resolution is passed. Thank you. So we'll now break briefly for a cup of tea, and if we're back at 11:45. Time constraint. So we're hopping to item 7.6, Wakatu non-vesting option, page 47. So, Marie, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I take the paper as read, but just emphasise that this paper, following our workshop that we had a couple of weeks ago, this paper is solely about 11 Paul Street, other than giving you an update that we're working towards other solutions and continuing to talk with Wakatu Corporation. But in terms of decision, all that we're asking you to do here is to approve staff finalising negotiations for an easement for the 11 Paul Street property, where the piece of land that's involved is expected to be just service berm and plantings and things. It's highly unlikely, Jamie has explained to us, Jamie McPherson, that it would ever actually be land that could attract NZTA funding. There's a tiny possibility, but he said it's so small, it's not a concern.
Okay, thank you. So the paper is reasonably self-explanatory. Questions and or moving and or seconding? Councillor Mayling, Councillor Dowler.
I'm happy to move, but I do have concerns about the subsequent issues with because I was involved in Plan Change 80, which is a much bigger issue going forward. But I'm happy to move this one.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's why this paper is very constrained to the one particular location. Councillor Dowler, then Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I'm just going to confirm that this is nothing to do with 11 Paul Street. There's nothing to do with the future of the Motueka West one, and I just was a bit worried about the wording that on number 4 was quite open. That was all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to stick on that basis because I too just want absolute clarity that it was 11 Paul Street. What could have been helpful in terms of round 5 and 6 was that council will continue to workshop options for policy around future discussions, because it's sort of left it open, me wondering, because it was really clear the direction from the workshop that this was 11 Paul Street only. I became unclear in the resolution. So on the basis that I'm absolutely clear, happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. I don't feel comfortable with the wording that we've got in there, because for me, it's not a done deal on just 11 Paul Street. To me, that gives opportunity for it to go further for the West Side development without it coming back to workshopping. Because when I read that, I didn't read it as being just we're working on today's resolution being 11 Paul Street, which, by the way, I don't have a problem with.
Okay, so it's really the wording of 5, is it?
Mm.
Because 4 reflects that the final documentation needs to be blah, 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 gives the chief executive for 11 Paul Street. 5 opens up the question of further conversations. It says will be brought back to council, which is the only way it can proceed. But if that was worded, staff expect to be able to report back to council at a workshop prior to a council meeting in June 2025, so that it leaves the only way it can proceed further than this resolution is via council resolution, but it gives the opportunity for it to be workshop first, should that be a preferred course of action.
I think, given, and Leonie may be able to confirm this, and we haven't yet got a meeting with Wakatu, have we?
To the chair, I have had conversations with Emma, and there's still continuing talks going on. We've received letters from the minister as well as from the CEO of Wakatu, not Wakatu, Wakatahi, and they are definitely considering it and can see that, but we could never go forward until we got some level of agreement from them. So we could workshop it, but I'm just a bit confused what we would workshop exactly if we can't get a resolution through Wakatahi.
I think too, we were going to have more conversations with Wakatu Incorporation.
That
So-
hasn't happened either.
The other thing I want to make really, because this is worded as though it's all about Wakatu. And 11 Paul Street is. The policy, on the other hand, has nothing to do with Wakatu. And so I think the actual headline of this should have been, now I think about it, non-vesting of assets options. It can then refer to Wakatu in terms of 11 Paul Street, but the policy very deliberately is not specific to any party or group of parties. So I think it's important to recognise the overall conversation, the specifics are clearly about, in this case, Wakatu and 11 Paul Street. So I just think that probably the best wording, and now reflecting, is that staff expect to bring a report back to council about these discussions, full stop. And that leaves open the option of timing. It also leaves open the option of a workshop should that be determined, because depending on what you get back from all of the parties, it may or may not be appropriate to bring it straight to a council meeting. So it leaves the options open. So if the movers and seconders are happy just to leave it as brought back to council. Okay. Excellent. Councillor Manley, thank you. Is there anything further? Oh, yep, Councillor Della.
Yeah, I just don't want negotiations to begin behind closed doors unless councillors know what's going on.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be a whole lot of conversations between the council staff, the CEO, and we will have it reported back to us in one method or another, and nothing can change without a council resolution. So that is the point in time where we are involved. Should council staff identify a need to have a conversation with us earlier than that, or then I'm sure that'll be taken up. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I agree with points raised so far. And there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, and hopefully government will provide some direction. I mean, the amount of things that we're waiting for government direction on. But my only thing that I need to be careful of is, are we clear with the other party that this is not a precedent setting issue, and that it's a very different issue moving forward into the future with different areas? Or is there an expectation that this continues?
Marie.
We've certainly made it clear that Paul Street is in a different situation to the West Motueka scenario. And it is, because West Motueka has roads going all through it, whereas this is a tiny little piece that wouldn't attract the funding. But we will certainly be very careful in our communications to emphasise that that is something of great concern to councillors.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Next up, we will go back to Hamama Water Supply. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. This is reasonably straightforward. Hamama is a small community scheme. We collect rates for them and they run the scheme. And they have got a project coming up, a renewals project for a pipeline, which they need to replace. It was not in the long-term plan or the annual plan, so we need approval for funding to get underway, and they have surplus funds to cover the costs. That's it from me. Take any questions.
Thank you. Is someone prepared to move the resolution?
Happy to move.
Move, Councillor Hill. Seconded, Councillor Mackenzie. Any conversation or discussion, Councillor Kinnemont?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mayor. Does the committee install the pipework themselves, or do you use a local contractor?
They have got a contractor and a local plumbing company that they use for their works generally, and they do it on their behalf. We do help out with advice where they require it, and and if required, if we get a good deal on pipes and so on for them, we will help them with that as well.
And does the committee provide the pipes and fittings themselves to do so?
Depends on the scale of it. In this case, we'll probably provide the pipes for them because we can get a competitive rate.
And that's part of the 20,000.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butler and Councillor Hill.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm just wondering why this comes to a council meeting and whether or not this kind of decision can be made in an operational way without actually having to be voted on. I understand it's probably just a question of policy, but it would be good to know because it's a very efficient water supply. They sterilise their water when it gets to the end point, that is to each person's house, and it runs so well, and just seems to be strange that we have to have this come in front of the committee, come in front of council. Thanks.
Assume it's related to the fact that we're collecting the money.
Through the mayor, yeah, and the delegation document. Essentially, yeah, we've got to adhere to the delegation document. Capital spend that's not budgeted needs to come back to council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hill.
Thank you. So I'm wondering how come what our process is with the committee around identifying what maintenance work there is coming up to be able to get it in the annual plan and not have to go through this process.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand it, but it's so we work with them every year to put the budget together for Hamamu. And in the past, if they've needed funding for capital, we've had to go out and look at a targeted rate to recover it from the community. So yeah, it's an annual process we go through with them for both annual plan and long-term plan.
I don't understand. Thank you, Mike. I don't know. I don't understand how come if they knew they were needing to do this maintenance. So it's been in the past. I think it's been called maintenance. I've done a kilometre of pipe, concrete pipe, replaced it, and it was maintenance. And that's what they're thinking. And that they were wondering why this 2 kilometres they're going to do is going to be now called capital. But in my conversations with you, Matt, around this, I'm just trying to work out how come we didn't know they were doing this so that it could get into the annual plan or whatever the maintenance schedule is or the capital, whatever, so that we don't have to do this report.
That's me, Mr. Mayor. I suspect it's probably had a number of recent failures that they weren't aware of at the time of the long-term plan.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the resolution on. In favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Next up, coronation exemption for Apatakika, Mike and Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take the report as read, and Evans here to assist with any technical questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. So again, the report is reasonably self-explanatory. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. So in terms of the exemption, will it follow closely the Torrent Bay exemption application? And is there a water at user? Is there proposed treatment at the end user site? Whatever, however they did the Torrent Bay one that seemed to be successful. So I get we're applying for it. What makes you think we're going to be successful in applying for it?
Evan.
Yeah, good question. It's different to Torrent Bay. Torrent Bay applied for exemption to the whole regulatory regime, everything. Need to monitor, treat, etc., etc. This is just an exemption from the requirement to have a residual disinfection, i.e. chlorine. Chances of getting it approved, who knows, basically. There was one, you probably know, the Canterbury councils went through quite a couple of years of toing and froing trying to get exempted from chlorine. One was successful, and that's the Selwyn Rakai Huts supply, which is about 250 people. But they've had to jump through a lot of hoops for that. I mean, the sort of main cause for optimism here is it's a really small supply, about 35 people. We've got centralised treatment already, very short network. We can very quickly get in touch. If there's a contamination event, we can get in touch with them very quickly and hand dose chlorine if need be. So, yeah, of course, but again, it would set a bit of a precedent probably for the smaller supplies if it's to be approved.
Good luck to them not having chlorine in their water.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that Torrens Bay got complete exemption from pretty much everything, and it supplies more than this, certainly over the peak period of summer, should provide some support to the conversation. But there's a very large but. Yes, dealing with Taumata ROI may prove interesting indeed. Councillor Butler, Councillor Ellis, Councillor Kinnemont, Councillor Greening.
Yeah, happy to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Kinnemont.
Happy to second, but I've got a couple of little questions of you. Has there been any issue to date with Giardia, cryptosporidium?
In Apataki specifically?
In this Apataki?
Yeah. Not that we're aware of. We have had the odd incident a few years ago. The previous old reservoir was a bit leaky, and there was I think a bird might have got in there.
And secondly, how secure is the source?
Not secure. It's a surface water stream that comes off the hill.
So it's from a well or from
surface water stream.
Okay.
Beautiful, pristine, clear, lovely Golden Bay stream. The sort of place lots of people, dip their hands in and drink out of every day of the week. Bloody beautiful water. No health issues at all. all part of the cake. Yeah, I'll build your Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I've just got a quick question and a statement. So do we have any idea how long it will take to get a response from the regulator?
Quite a while. Yeah. They say in their guidance, I think for chlorine exemptions, they give themselves at least 2 months to make a decision or a response or whatever. But within that time, they may come back with questions and whatnot. But yeah, it's a lengthy process, 2 to 3 months.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll be certainly supporting this. I mean, the communities have to say about what actually goes into the water is a pretty important thing. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, just wanted to get clarity around the comment you made about hand dosing chlorine. So are we doing that as a reactionary measure, or do we do that like we were in Richmond, although it wasn't hand dosing, a periodic flushing of the pipes?
Yeah, that's a reactionary measure. We had a couple of years ago, for example, there was a treatment, the UV system failed for whatever reason for a period of time, and there was a potential for water to have gone through essentially untreated except for the filtration. So we precautionarily dosed some chlorine into the tanks, literally poured a bottle of appropriate liquid chlorine in there, stirred it up and sent that through. And that's the sort of circumstance we would do that.
Okay, thank you.
So just out of interest, if they do push for permanent, which I think, given the size and therefore the reflective cost implications would probably be weighing in their favour, is there, when they come back and say, oh, we're considering maybe it should be permanent, is there their opportunity then to say, well, we could maybe periodically do a chlorine flush if there's still concerns around the health approach, or are we not considering that or not putting that on the table? It's either react or permanent.
Yeah, I think if they tell us to permanently chlorinate, I think that that's the answer. We have the right of appeal. But I
I
wouldn't.
just wonder whether in the discussions you may get a feel for. I don't know how they do this with you. It sounds like it goes away and then it comes back. But one would hope that there might be some flexibility that if they think that a reactionary hand dosing is not enough and they're therefore leaning to periodic, we can somehow throw in maybe the consideration that we could do a periodic flushing if they really have concerns. But I don't think they should do it. It's such a small movement.
They shouldn't do, but they may well do. And I'm presuming in the toing and froing, which may happen between Taumata Arawai and the scheme owners and ourselves, that those sort of options can be explored.
Yeah, I mean, that could be, they could grant an exemption with a condition that we do something like that periodic flush through.
All right, thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Tapawera Community Hub location. Martin and John.
Good morning. So this follows on from a couple of workshops we have had on this subject, providing the due diligence that officers are provided to elected members on this project and our long-term plan. There is a need to amend the resolution in a couple of areas, which we'll work through now, and then we'll take any questions as read. Take the report as read and take any questions.
Can any amendments be shared on screen, please?
Yeah, so hopefully it should be being shared now, Councillor Greening, with the amendments highlighted in yellow.
So the resolution number 3 has arisen from some recent meetings with the community in the last week, where they are keen to see the original site offered up, 95 Main Road, Tapawera, still remain in consideration as we go through the locations. So that would be removed from the resolutions to keep it within that consideration. Item 5, we feel because of the acknowledgement of the current consultancy community consultation that's out there on the resource management plans, reserve management plans, we need to ensure that we keep the item open and allow for that information to come back before any decisions are made around the location. And equally, the desire of the community is to keep moving with this project, so to allow us to do preliminary work to inform the future concept designs around these locations, so that we can bring the best information back to the community and council to make their final decision.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Thank you for outlining that and highlighting the changes to the resolution. So it's open for discussion, feedback, comment, and or moving and seconding. I presume Deputy Mayor Bryant will want to have a say. Councillor Mackenzie.
I'm assuming I'm first. Yeah, no,
you are, yes.
Yeah. So we're in consultation. I've been working with Martin and John and thank them for the work they've done, and we've made these amendments somewhat at the request of the community and staff, and hopefully this finds a way forward that we can continue working on this project for the community.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bryant.
And I'm happy to move.
Okay, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, thank you. Look, I'm happy to second. I think that the community is very engaged, and I think that this really helps them to move the project along. So very happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Dakey, Councillor Murray, Councillor Greening.
Support this in principle. Just question around the change to 3. How will we communicate to the community that there is challenges with that site? Will they have optics over the scope of the challenges? Because I'd hate for them to see an overhead plan of 3 sites and say, oh, we'd like it there, when the reality is that site will be perhaps more difficult than the others. So will we have a plan for explaining that through the community?
The purpose of this, yes, we will, but it all depends on what we come back to and the advice we give to yourselves, because what we didn't want to do is take this off the table. So because we've had the feedback from the community, we wanted to have the ability to not remove this from our thinking.
Just to clarify that if the community was in support of that, I would hate to think that we saw information that they didn't, and then they said, well, actually, we voted for that option, and then you chose this. So what I'm saying is I'd like, if there's challenges with that site through that process, those to be shared up front, so they're aware. So they don't think, well, we didn't listen, because we might see different info than they do. Thank you.
So that's the reason for that.
Yep. So I think it's essential that they get all the information that's available when coming to to their view of where the best location might be. Thank you, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Tim. I'm nervous around the removal of 3 because unless your advice has changed in terms of the workshops we've had, there's good reason why that was proposed. And so we're backing, what we're intending to do is we're going to back off, still consult, and then either the advice was wrong or we're going to ignore the advice around the suitability of that site and have an unpleasant conversation with the community down the track. And in the meantime, we're going to spend money on a concept designs and bits and pieces over multiple sites, spending this money with no outcome. So I'm becoming more uneasy, and I come uneasy in terms of, I wasn't around this table, but if I remind you about a grandstand just over northwest of Motueka, and what happens once you start to do something in a building that is gifted that might have historical status, I'm just really worried about it. And in the meantime, it has some fundamental impacts on what the community has to raise as well. So if 95 is the site, then actually the value of the land will be taken into account. The community is probably almost there. If it's another site, the community should be thinking about where the other $400,000 should be coming from. So I'm just nervous that we usually get to this stage on feasibility and some advice, and we've had that. And now we're just going to loosen up. I think we're just putting off a debate and that we're going to have at some stage. So the bit that will get me to support the majority of councillors is that community facilities are absolutely essential and an important part of our community. But this sounds like a future hiding.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think points well noted. I don't think anyone would like to see a rerun of the situation that we found ourselves in. I suspect this has slightly less historical status in terms of formal historical status. That's not to mean that the community might see it as a valuable historic asset, or parts of the community might. But point noted. Councillor Greening.
Yeah, so can I just get some clarity around the consultation? Will that consultation be open to people rejecting any new facility, or is it just a discussion around where it's going to be located? i.e. we're going to say that's out of scope if you reject a new facility?
The consultation, which is currently open at the moment, is through a reserve management plan process, and we have, I guess, left the question quite open to get opinion from the community as to whether or not they support or otherwise the hub. That consultation has closed.
Because we have heard that the community is quite divided, and that the group that is supporting this is actually quite a small slice of the overall community. So I do hope that we will, and I'm inviting the community really to step up now, and in that submission process, if they do not want a new hub at all and just want to continue with the existing asset, that they say that. Just on the rerun potential, I have heard that some in the community do not want to lose the old building, and they actually want council to buy it off them, which in a way is us then funding their part of the portion as well. So can staff confirm that we will not be buying the old location should a new location be agreed upon?
That's not our decision. That's over to council to make that decision.
Have staff been discussing it or considering it? Has any councillors mentioned it to them?
No.
Right. So that is my concern, is that this goes through and then suddenly, as I have heard, there are some councillors talking to some residents about this potential option. And I wouldn't want to see us then buy the asset and effectively fully fund it. So I have concerns about that. Generally, I think we shouldn't be doing this anyway. We don't have the funds to do that at this time. It's not critical infrastructure. It's a nice to have. You're only driving it because DIA have put up some funds. This is classic sales mentality. There's a discount. Look, I've saved money. Well, no, I've actually spent money. I don't support where they're going. I certainly support the consultation if it's going to be open to the community having a voice. But I think financially, along with some other facilities, it's bad timing. This council is financially stretched, and as unfortunate as that is, this council should be making these types of hard decisions. Instead, we continue spending on things where we do have a choice that we can make not to spend on, and it's not critical infrastructure.
Excellent, thank you, Mark.
So I'd like to call a division, please.
So I think the answer to the question is that the questions that were asked through the reserve management plan were pretty open and enabled people to say they don't support the concept, the idea at all, as well as commenting on the location. The annual plan is open for submission, and people, should they also wish to state their views on whether this project should remain in the annual plan, are also highly entitled to make that point through the annual plan consultation process. So I think there's plenty of scope for people to provide their feedback to council on this project. I guess the irony is that the government are the people, certainly one of the groups who are saying that council should stick to their knitting and concentrate on core services, not do the nice to haves. Ironically, who's already put their money into this project? The government. So clearly they see it as a priority. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put in $800,000. So it's interesting.
Wild assumption there, Tim.
So, it's the only assumption you can make if they've funded it already. Righto. So we will now put the resolution. Oh, right of reply, okay. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So going a bit deeper with what Councillor Maru has shared, how does this resolution reflect all the mahi that's happened, albeit in workshops, because we do those behind closed doors? Because it's kind of like we've done that, we've had those conversations, we understand some things that maybe that community aren't aware of, then what cost implications are there for us with report writing, for us going through with the next lot of work? And the difference between one location to another comes at a cost, surely, for Te Puwera. So their community contribution amount would be changing. Where is that in the decisions of what we're putting forward to consult with them?
So coming back to the point that Councillor Murray raised earlier, all the information that we have about locations and costs, I'm presuming is being shared with the community through whatever processes we either have run or are running, including the potential issues if you choose one side over another, etc., etc. So I'm just working on a basis. The answer to the first question, which is yes, we will share all that information, picks up the answer to your question. So is that the case?
Up until now, that site 95 was off the agenda. What we're hearing from the community is actually they want that considered as part of the bigger picture. So what we'll do is do some work, bring it back to the committee, and with an open book, this is how, of all the options, this is the cost of doing this, and that will include the substantial work required in that building as well.
So are we all clear?
Well, maybe I can help clear.
Are we all clear? I've called a division as well. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I note your call for a division. Yes, no, but go ahead. Like I want people to be clear what it is
So what I'm
that we are doing.
So we are currently consulting through the reserve management plan.
Correct.
Currently consulting now. Yep. But yet we haven't given all the information on the options. So we're currently getting feedback now, but we haven't first set out all the information on what we are consulting all the information back. So I'm unclear about what we're consulting on.
So we are consulting on the pros and cons. Well, the open-ended question, the pros and cons of the project, and the three locations. This has come in the last week, and this is why we wanted to keep it open-ended. Now it's your choice whether or not we do this or not. This is what we're getting from the community. So if you decide to continue down the road which you've directed us on, we're fine with that. But we wanted to give you the option to consider that site, so you could have a full suite of information to make a decision in the future.
And then my final question on this is: so if I don't know if people have already submitted, but in terms of just submitting, this is where we want because this is where we believe it should be. How will they get the information that we've had going? These are all the reasons why we don't consider 95 to be, to be appropriate. How do the community get that? Because otherwise, you're going to get. We've already decided on the site. So how do you communicate the information that we've had and make the decision to the community to get balanced consultation back? Because I suspect you're just going to get 95 is where it needs to be.
Well, I guess bearing in mind that we haven't consulted because this isn't council-owned land. Just remember that as well. This is not none of this is council-owned, so that's why we're consulting on those other sites through the Reserves Act. So that's the challenge we've got.
Potentially. Yes.
I haven't got an answer for you, I'm afraid.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Through the chair, it has been mentioned this morning by one of the speakers that they had heard that a councillor or maybe councillors had indicated that there was a possibility that we might build on another site apart from 95 and purchase 95. As a councillor that attends those meetings, I think I can emphatically say that I have never heard that suggested, and maybe Deputy Mayor Bryant might like to comment as well. So if it's not Deputy Mayor Bryant or myself, be interested to know which other councillors highly engaged in the Tapawera community.
I take it you confirm Councillor Mackenzie's.
I do.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your helpful suggestion. I'm not doing that. I think we can probably arrive at it. So at the moment, there are two processes ongoing that people can input into. There's the reserve management plan, which doesn't confirm anything other than will enable a site to be used. That's all that can be done through the reserve management planning process. So, and whether it ever happens or not, or if it's ever funded or not, is entirely over to other processes and decisions. But it provides an opportunity for people to make their submissions. The annual plan processes where the funding is considered is also open for consultation, or will be, and people can input into that, and there's a decision to be made at the end of that over what funding is made available through what source. I think the key thing is the clarity for the community who are making those submissions to either of those processes. If it's not council-owned land, RFC is an option. The land could change hands. It's not unheard of either. So they could gift the land to the council, and the council could then consider making it reserve and then use RFCs. But that's all a step of processes and considerations. So the clarity I think people want is what information do they have to make those submissions? So do they have that information about the status of the land and the potential impact on funding sources to enable them to make submissions based on information, not just plucked out of their perceptions of what might or might not be the best thing?
Yeah, because this has come probably in the last week, that didn't form part of the consultation process. So it's been not even including that consultation. So we haven't asked the question. So this is I know there's some frustration here, but this has come from the community group there, and we're just providing the option to reconsider. You could choose not to consider it and carry on down the road where we're going, but we wanted to give you full opportunity to see the whole suite of options you've got.
Got it. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I'm a bit confused. So could I have some clarification, please? So at the moment, we're currently consulting on the Lakes Murchison Reserve Management Plan. And in that, it will say what we want the uses for those reserves. Now, so people can decide if they'd like to see a community facility on those reserves. Get that. But if we leave Tate's Free out, that's on land not owned by council. And so I'm just trying to work out how those that, so in the reserve management plan, they could be against allowing reserve land to be used for a community hub, or they could say that they approve of reserve land being used for a community hub. But at what point, but that land at 95, is it? It's not part of that process. So at what point can they say, we don't want that land being used? And how's that actually going to be packaged? Because it looks to me like there could be a miss unintentionally. So how is that going to be consulted in the community? Because it's separate to the reserves process.
I come back to the point that this isn't council land, so we can't consult on. But this is really because this has come quite recently. That I mean, I really don't have an answer to your question apart from the fact that we're consulting. We got direction from yourselves to a workshop, which was consult on those 3 sites. We've done that. This came fairly recently from the community group, so we're providing this option to you. I know it puts you in a position, but this isn't council land, so it's really hard to consult on something that's not council land. All we can do is provide the information, as Mayor Tim has alluded to. There are several constraints, not just financial, but otherwise on this site, and we've as officers not changed our position on that. We think there's many more constraints on this site than any of the others. So we haven't changed our opinion on that.
So thank you, because it does actually make it slightly clearer. So how is the community going to get that information that Mayor Tim has raised about the issues of funding, who owns the land, community contribution? How's that going to be packaged in a clear way to the community? Because it gets missed in the reserves consultation. So where is it going to come in there? Is that going to be, how's that going to be packaged in the annual plan to show all of that information that we've seen?
Well, it won't form part of the annual plan process. We're going to have to think about how we do that. I haven't got an answer for you today. We'll have to come back to the committee and give you some guidance on that if you choose to remove item 3.
Right. Councillor Hill.
Can we have a screen share, please? It looks like there's some highlighted things on the screen in there. I just wanted to see what you're up to.
Yeah, so they're the same things that hopefully were highlighted earlier when the screen was being shared. So nothing's altered since then.
Thank you.
The resolution is amended from what was contained in the agenda. I'm largely relying on there's only 2 councillors who, as far as I'm aware, have been intimately involved in these conversations for months, if not years. And they've been part of forming this resolution. My inclination is to go with they've moved and seconded the resolution. We're not committing to any particular course of action at this point other than consultation and re-including the consideration of 95 Main Road Tapawera. I think it's been very clear to staff that we need to share as soon as possible all the information we have, if it hasn't already been shared, to enable people who are submitting, and I'm not sure what the time frame for the reserves one is and when it closes. Okay, so there's some considerable time, and the annual plan is from coming up when we approve the consultation document. So every bit of information we have needs to be provided to through whatever mechanism, whether it's through the meetings, online, whatever, so that they can assimilate it and inform their submission to either or both of those processes. I think on balance, having heard the conversation, if that happens, then my inclination is to proceed with the resolution as it's been moved and seconded, accepting the potential complications that come with it. And then ultimately, at the end of each of those processes, that council is going to have to determine both the funding conversations through the annual plan, the reserve management decision through the reserve management planning process. And then there's still another step to go beyond that in terms of confirming all the funding, getting the design done. So there's more steps beyond that before the actual project is committed to. So on balance, I'm inclined to put the resolution to the meeting and see where it goes.
All right.
I'll come to you for your right of reply.
Well, I am wondering if I should just speak to it, so if anyone has any questions, they can ask me, which is not permitted orders with the right of reply.
All right. So
speak to the resolution, which I didn't do order. So I'll try and do this in some sort of reasonable order. So in relation to number 3, this is somewhat driven by Tapawera Connect, as one of the groups that John alluded to. Tapawera and District's Community Council own this site. So this site is not owned by the Tasman District Council, is the important point. They're in the process of obtaining a structural assessment for that building and would like to wait to see what the outcome of that is. They're spending in the order of $10,000 to get a structural assessment of that building, seeing whether that could be used as the basis for the hub. The Tapawera Community Council will have to consult if it's going to do anything significant with the building for the local community. In their constitution, it does say that if for any reason they fold, that this site would come to the Tasman District Council, but there is no intention that I'm aware of to do that at this stage. Just in relation to the costs, Martin has done some indicative costs for all the other sites, not so much this one, and they've been shared with the steering group and the groups that are involved. And we've also had a walkover with all those same groups looking at all the sites on the ground. And there is, it is particularly difficult for difficult to put a new building on a Greensfield site in a community and pick out a site, because they all have advantages and disadvantages. Probably the best site has the most expensive costing. So obviously we've made it entirely clear to the group that there is no more room for cost increases unless they find the funding themselves. The money from DIA is in the bag, that is secured, and they have indicated that they will look at an extension, but they don't want to keep doing that. They want to see something done for this community. So I just think if there's any questions around those, what I've said now, Mayor Tim, I'm happy to try and answer them or answer them.
Okay, so are there any further questions that anyone wishes Stuart to provide or Councillor McKenzie to provide more information on before I put the resolution? And just so we're all clear, I will be putting the resolution, so just bear that in mind. Now is your chance, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Tim. So, Stu, in the discussions with Tasman Connect, have they had insights to what the advice from our staff have been in terms of limitations of those of that current site?
Yes, they have, well and truly.
And so, what's the reasoning that that still is the best site?
By and large, because it's in the centre of the township, historically been the community centre. It's got the most road frontage. It's directly opposite the shopping, the area that everyone visits.
Right. I still remain nervous, but not nervous enough not to support the resolution, because it doesn't actually say we're going to put it there. It just says, it just takes away that we're not going to put it there. I just wondered whether there was a connotation, I guess we've had enough conversation in terms of nervousness of continuing down that side. Because I think that hard conversation is going to come at some stage.
For sure, and I accept that.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, I will look to Councillor Ellis.
I'm still struggling with this because we talk about consulting in the community, but I still don't see a clear consultation process where we have all of the information in one place and the community can go, yes, this is what we want and this is how we want to fund it. And I feel quite uncomfortable with that because I could see we could get to the point where we get through the reserves plan and we get an idea of part of it and we go through the annual plan and we get an idea of part of it, but at no point do we have a consultation where we go, right, this is all the information we have for all of these different sites, yes or no. And I can't see any plan where the community is actually going to have a chance to do that. And so that's why I'm still feeling uncomfortable. I mean, often in our community, we say we've gone out and consulted, and then the community goes, oh, hang on, that's not what I thought it was going to look like, or how that was going to happen. And so this is a great opportunity to be able to package it and do a really good process where we hear what the community has instead of getting pieces of it. Can we?
I don't know if you've seen the questions in the reserve management plan that relate to this project.
Yeah, but as it's already been stated, they're still pretty broad. And they don't cover land that we don't own.
They're pretty specific, actually, in terms of the consultation questions. It's reasonably comprehensive. My view is we're not going to know, and we're not going to get to a point where everyone's in agreement, and we're going to remain uncomfortable. Like, if the longer you stay in the seat, I assure you, you're not going to get any more comfortable. This entire life is how uncomfortable you feel, and you're slightly less and more comfortable, but you're never entirely comfortable. I think the two processes that we're running will give us more feedback from the community. The questions that are included in the reserve management one cover all of the options. And at least we'll get that feedback in a formal fashion, written down, not subject to the criticism we've had previously where it was led by the advocates of the group and it was a survey and all of those things. So it's run by us, the questions are very clear, the timeframes are very clear, we'll get the feedback, and then we're going to have to come back and make another subsequent decision about next steps through both of the processes. So I think we just have to move on. Otherwise, we're still going to be having this exact same conversation 6 weeks from now. So with that, do you still need a right of reply on top of your speaking slot?
I would just like to urge you all to support the continuation of this project and enabling, because we don't seriously want to lose that DIA money, which is substantial for a small community. The fundraiser is getting mobilised and active and already has some funds in hand.
Okay, thank you. So that's been a extensive conversation. So I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh. Robin.
Deputy Mayor Bryant. For Councillor Butler.
For
Councillor Dakey.
For
Councillor Dowler.
For
Councillor Ellis.
For
Councillor Greening.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For
Councillor Walker.
Thank you. For
Councillor Shellcrest.
For
Councillor Maru.
For
Councillor Mayling.
For
Councillor McKenzie.
For
Councillor Kinnamonth.
For
Mayor King.
For.
Thank you.
Thank you. The resolution is carried. Next up, we've got Lower Queen Street Bridge upgrade temporary bypass considerations. Jack and Jamie, welcome.
You best not looking so good, Robin.
You just never know. Jamie Jack, Jack, over to you. Introduce the item. Obviously, take it as read. Anything you'd like to add in terms of emphasis or detail, and then I'll come across to questions.
This is the report about the options to manage traffic, either temporary bypass or closure of the Lower Queen Street during the construction of the Lower Queen Street Bridge. We take the report as read, and we are open to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Dakey, Councillor Mailing, Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Happy to move this. Thank you for the work on this. Thank you for giving the community a say and options, helping them understand the challenges that you face in doing these projects. We certainly heard from the public the tremendous disruption that congestion might cause for them and the financial burdens on especially freight companies. So constructing the bypass, although it comes at a cost, is the right option. And I also thank you for including the extra work on the potential for speeding the project up. And although I'm not supporting that today, I appreciate it being in there. I think we have to go for what we can afford and what will serve the community best. And so I'm happy to move this.
Thank you, Councillor Dakey. Councillor Mailing.
Yeah, I'm happy to second and support this. I always was keen on the bypass. My understanding is there's 10,000 cars or vehicles in that road per day.
Through the chair, yeah, there's over 10,000 vehicle movements per day on that stretch of Lower Queen Street.
Without this bypass, you'd end up with gridlock, and the cost is greater to the community in terms of lost productivity. So it is an extra cost, but I don't think there's any other option.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tim. Just question in relation to 2.9, where you talk about free closures, short duration. Just explain why that's necessary and how that'll work, please.
Through the chair. We have 1 week closure next week, starting from Monday, and that is necessary for us to remove some trees and to do some work under the road. After that, if the temporary bypass option is chosen, the only other times that we need a short-term closure is basically when we do the tie-ins from the new bridge to the existing road. And those short durations, we will, as far as reasonably possible, manage that during night closures or short-term closures during the weekend.
Thank you. And just in relation to the bridge, we've got a good price on the hire of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through Mayor. Just a quick question. I know that there's been lots of comms go out around this, and a lot of feedback from the community, not just from Richmond, which is good to see. Our district's actually got in behind giving us some responses. I was a little bit surprised to get that email from Pinnacle House as to how they had to close for the day. And what comms have we done around supporting, enabling access whilst we're closed? Does that mean people like Pinnacle House will no longer be able to operate for that week? Or have we gone to them with ideas of how we can support them through this phase?
Through the chair, the entrance to Pinnacle Health is open as it always is. We were not closing that off, and that's what we've communicated with them.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next up, amendments to delegations register. Welcome, Leaf Lacan. Leaf Lacan, who's welcome.
Kia ora. Just to introduce myself, my name's Lacan Beach, and I'm a legal advisor. This is just to seek amendments to the delegations register. I'll take the report as read and happy to respond to questions.
Thank you. It is now open for questions. Or moving and seconding if that's someone's willing to do so. Councillor Mackenzie moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mailing. Councillor Bryant, did you have a question? Deputy Mayor Bryant. Councillor Maher, I'll come back to you.
I think I've got a question for the to be. I think it's just the recreation reserve. Hang on, let me find the 5.6F is section 54 for the purposes that do not require public notification under the Reserves Act to grant a lease or license. What part of the land is that zoned? I'll tell you where I'm going with this length. So in Motueka, the lease to the Motueka market on Dix Reserve, which is zoned recreational land, goes through the Motueka Community Board. Does this mean that it doesn't need to do that anymore, or is this referring to something else and actually reserve zone land?
Through the chair, so under the Reserves Act, when you're granting a lease over that particular type of reserve, you don't need public consultation if it's for a trade or business occupation. So with that, it's not changing anything. It's just that because under the section there's different types of purposes, and for that specific purpose of a trade or occupation, you don't need to go out to consultation, where the other purposes you do.
So in terms of what's currently, there's no change to the current delegation that we currently have in terms of who makes that decision. So currently the change to staff having that delegation and not a committee of council, there's no change currently. I guess that's what I'm asking. Is there a change in the delegation?
There is a change in the delegation.
So currently who has the delegation to approve that use?
So currently it's the Chief Executive Group Manager and Enterprise and Property Services Manager. And the change we're proposing is that where it requires public consultation, that it will require decision of the Environment and Regulatory Committee. And where no consultation is required, then it can be delegated to those staff members.
And then I've got one more, and it's possibly a Kim Hospital pass. It's on page 118. It's the delegation 393, and it's the power to carry out the function and duties as Secretary of the District Licensing Committee. So my understanding is that currently sits with Melanie Welsh, who's a environmental officer. The delegation says it's a team leader of environmental health. Oh, is that the delegated person who can appoint the Secretary of the District Licensing Committee? Just talk me through, it's on page 118 and it's 393.
That's correct. It's the power to appoint, not the power to exercise.
There's lots of red in this form. I think I'm okay.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
So mine is at 5:15. For you, Mr. Mayor, just in relation to 5:15 and D38, I believe one word here may be the wrong word. So it says this delegation will enable the Chief Executive Officer and the Group Manager of Environmental Assurance to issue a public notice calling the owner of wild stock trespassing on land to remove their stock. I believe that word should be wandering stock, not wild stock. We don't really have a lot of wild stock in New Zealand. And usually if they are, like in Western Australia, they're not owned. So it should be wandering stock.
Probably a good point.
Through the chair, yes, happy to make that change when we update the register.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
Responding, Councillor. Thank you, Brian. Councillor Kinnermont, then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Page 93, 5.6E talks about under Reserves Act licensed and reserve land structures on reserve land, including bars, camping grounds, parking, mooring, and sports and rec facilities. What type of mooring we talk about on a park? Is that just a slip with the wrong word there?
Through the chair, that's just the statutory language, mooring. So it's just its plain meaning.
I mean, moorings are at sea or on water, not on reserves.
I'll be on reserves, which will be usually on land.
Right.
And through Mr. Mayor, maybe able to assist. Port Tarakau sits on a local purpose reserve, and Port Tarakau, for example, has moorings.
Thank you.
And one last question. Page 96, clause 5.17, navigation safety bylaw talks about relaxation of the automatic identification system due to lack of AIS coverage in the area. AIS is a worldwide system, the coverage worldwide. I'd like to know where in the Tasman area where we don't have coverage of this AIS system. To me, it seems erroneous that we're trying to make exemptions for this, where I think I'd like to know where we don't have coverage.
Through the chair, the harbour master highlighted one situation in the Nelson Lakes where there's poor cell coverage, and I can't remember the exact lake, but there was one vessel that had difficulty using the AIS system, and in that particular situation, it was the only boat operating on the water. So that was one of the situations where he highlighted that might need to be addressed. But in terms of this delegations paper, we're not looking at that particular request now. It's just it was just provided as an illustrative example of where it'll usually just be one-off vessel requests for those technical reasons. So if that application does come in, that would probably be an opportunity to look closer at that.
Thank you, good explanation.
And through the chair, I note that decision will be made by the Environment and Regulatory Committee. Okay, thank you, Councillor Butler and Councillor Ellis.
Oh, yeah, thank you, through the chair. Yeah, just in relation to the delegations under the Reserves Act, I noticed that there's delegations to the Strategy and Policy Committee and the Environment and Regulatory Committee. Should those committees change in the future, would that be a straightforward process to change those delegations to whatever new committees are put in place, or is there an expectation that those committees will be in there for the long term? I just wouldn't like to see extra work have to happen because those committees have been specified.
Through the chair, if the committee structures were to change, we would need to come back and seek an amendment to the delegations register to change the delegations to those committees. So it would require a decision of council.
Okay, thanks. So do those committees actually need to be named in the way that they are named there?
Through the chair, yes, in this particular specific delegation, these committees have roles in their terms of reference to, in terms of a specific reserve management classification and the operational procedures. If we were to, if the council was going to delegate to standing committees generally, that would require a change to the delegations register because the other standing committee does not currently review those. That
So
currently does.
at the end of the day, after every triennial election, there is a review of committees, and the council, the mayor/council have the opportunity to relook at it all. And there's always a delegations paper that comes to council post that to reset all of the delegations that apply for the triennium that you are now in. And so, to answer Councillor Butler's question, yes, if the committees change, the delegations need to change, but that is a standard part of the workload that happens post every triennial election. Okay, thank you, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, through you, Tim. Apologies, I could have asked some questions earlier, but I was a bit late getting to this portion of the report. I just want to work out with consistency regarding the power to dispose of dogs. I assume by dispose we mean destroy. Under section 70, we've added the officers can make that decision, whereas other areas within the Act where it's talking about disposing of a dog that's seized and the clauses underneath, it has to go through either a team leader or a regulatory manager. But for this one, it can be down to just an enforcement officer. So I'm just wondering if it's meant to be that way, because in my view, I would imagine it's sensible to have it at the regulatory manager phase and not at a general staff member phase. So I'm just wondering why for section 70 it's set that way, because every other disposal or destroying of a dog has to have a manager's authorisation.
Through the chair, the reason we took that approach when I talked to the regulatory team was that those staff members do make the decisions to dispose of the dog in that situation, rather than just just following the recommendation of the manager, following the decision of the manager. But yeah, I acknowledge that might be different from the other approaches under that part of the legislation.
So why don't we have it consistently over all of those parts? Because for barking, a general staff member can make a decision to destroy a dog, but if it's a seized dog, perhaps for biting somebody, then it has to go through a manager. So I'm just trying to work out why it's inconsistent and why the level changes, because I think it should be the same in all of those instances, whichever way it is.
I'm not sure that the person who drafted the delegation can necessarily answer that. It's probably more of a question for the dog control officers / team, who I presume have recommended or in discussion with the legal people suggested this change. But
yeah, through the chair, I acknowledge that inconsistency, and that's just a yes. Mayor King has said that was the recommendation of the regulatory team, but we would be open to discussing that with the team, and if we need to amend that to make it more consistent.
Well, I mean, the resolution's been moved and seconded, so you can move an amendment, or you can accept the suggestion that should the resolution be passed, the conversation go back to the regulatory team, and if they need to make a further amendment, we can do that.
Can we do that, please?
Okay, so in terms of follow up from the meeting, should the resolution be passed, you will follow up that inconsistency and report back, and that can be via email as to what the reason is, what the rationale is, and if there's then a need for a further amendment, we can consider that at another meeting. Okay, thank you. Anything further? This has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next up, we have a section 17A review community facilities. Grant, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this review, service delivery review, relates to community centres, halls, miscellaneous community buildings, and also the Richmond Aquatic Centre. Take the report as read and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Open for questions, Councillor May, and/or moving and seconding of the resolution. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Grant, just a couple of questions. The first one, in terms of the 17A outcome, pretty much says business as usual, except for ASB Aquatic Centre in terms of then you've gone further than the review. So it suggests that it will be a new contract. Will it be re-tendered, or will it be an in-house conversation or renegotiation? So are you looking to externally tender that, or?
So through the chair, so we're yet to make a decision on that. If there was to be a change and we didn't go out to tender, we would bring a report back on that. But we're not in that position.
Then just the other one. So the decision of a joint committee is on page 145. So in terms of long term, has there been any thoughts by staff in terms of replicating the Saxon Field model, bringing in sport and rec pools and centres into a joint council structure, or Lord help us, under something like infrastructure holdings?
Through the chair, no.
And so I'm not sure, have either of you had any oversight of how Buller operates the Solid Energy Centre in terms of it's in with the port company, I think, and the loss of the operational cost of their sport and rec assets has offset their tax bill against their port company?
Tax, just be very careful. But so holding companies, a number of councils operate holding companies that contain assets that both make money and lose money, and there is some potential advantages in that construction, of which Buller is one. So, but it's probably a much broader conversation than contained under Section 7A review of those assets. But yeah.
So in essence, just like in terms of the current governance, the operation of the community centres throughout the district, the halls committees, I think the best model, if you can get it, is community run, community owned and community operated and supported by council. So overall, I'm happy to move the acceptance of the 7A report, but I guess just encourage both councils to continue working together in terms of, is there a better way to overall package some of our bigger assets? And we have a new Paul Matuika with the ASB Centre, and I see it's another 2 years from Nelson's, but it doesn't make sense to me that we don't share some services in terms of when we appoint and tender and maybe get a better price. But happy to move.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McKenzie, then Councillor Butler, Councillor Kinnermont.
Yeah, thank you very much through the chair. I actually just want to take the opportunity to sort of publicly acknowledge the work of volunteers who help the functionality of these hall committees across our district, because, you know, in many areas of the council's business, volunteers, you know, they're hugely important in terms of delivering outcomes. So thanks to all those volunteers in our community.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Butler, then Councillor Kinnermont.
Yeah, happy to second. And I'd just like to thank the staff for their responsiveness to the individual issues that arise with our community facilities over in the Bay, where some of them are really pretty remote, but they're very important in emergencies. So yeah, like the Hall in Bainham and Pekawar and those places. So yeah, I'm happy to second. And we support the approach of, you know, a varied type of response depending on the situation.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mayor Tim. Just a couple of questions I made, Grant and Tony. So firstly, yeah, just endorse the comments Councillor McKenzie made across the district in particular, Lakesmith, there are a number of these forms you've talked about. They all vary slightly, but they all appreciate the support they get from you and from council financially and moral, and just helps make the community a better place. My question does relate to 510, which talks about the Richmond Aquatic Centre and the current contract expiring. This is on page 124. In November 25, and the need to get a procurement process under the way. So I think in answer to Councillor Maru's question, you did talk about that you're considering the options for that, and I just wondered what they were, because as my view, they'd be pretty limited. It's either procurement or in-house. Just wondered what the other options you were alluding to were.
Well, there probably aren't any other options, to be perfectly honest. We do intend to come back to report back on our approach and get a decision. So until this section 17A has been kind of approved by council, then we'll start making some moves into the next phase of renewing agreements with recreation centres and so forth. So
that's going to be quite a process across the district then, isn't it?
Yes, through the chair is, yeah. It's all legal though.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Eli. Order of candidate names on voting documents for the 2028, 2025. I imagine it should be 2025.
Oh, where is it?
All right, just on my run sheet.
Oh. No, so it's the 2025 order of candidate names and the electoral system for the 2028 election.
Oh, sorry, it is right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, so fairly straightforward. Councils are asked to make this decision leading up to every election. If you don't make a decision, the default is alphabetical. And you've got three options: alphabetical, pseudo-random, and random. Whichever of those options you go for in the candidate booklet, it will be alphabetical. So that will not change whichever option you go for. And just by the way, Nelson and Marlborough have both gone random.
Yeah, if you're in the middle,
last time you did pseudo-random.
Makes a little difference. Okay, thank you. Very clear, reasonably straightforward. Someone, well, there's any questions of Elaine firstly, and otherwise there's someone to move. And often. Councillor Mailing?
I think last time we went random, so I'm happy to move to do that. So
last time you went pseudo-random.
Pseudo-random? Well, let's keep it the same. All right, let's do pseudo-random.
Sorry, I can't hear Elaine.
Random means all the voting documents are different. Pseudo-random means they do a random order and all voting documents have that one order.
Happy to move pseudo-random. That seemed to work last time.
Seconded. Seconded, Councillor Walker. Okay, thank you, Councillor McKenzie.
Can I, through the chair, is there any difference in costs between pseudo-random and random in terms of producing information? No. Random, fully random is the least alphabetical bias, but it can confuse people who are comparing voting documents that have them in a different order.
Yeah, so if you have a family of people or a number of people living in a house and they all get different documents, they all have different orders. Yeah, all right. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded pseudo-random. There's no difference in cost. Anything further? If not, I will. Oh, Councillor Hill, sorry.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there's any advantage. Do you know, Elaine, if there's any research gone into, is there an advantage or disadvantage of appearing at the beginning of a list of dodgy suspects or at the bottom? Because if you did the one that just stays the same for everybody, and if there was some bias around, if you're down the bottom, it gets looked at less if people don't really know who they're voting for, and that would be a reason not to do that.
We have received some correspondence on that matter, but I'm not sure it's how how provable the information is. The thought is that a pseudo-random can still make the first 5 names more visible to everybody rather than somebody that is down at the bottom. So as I say, random removes any alphabetical bias, but can give rise to confusion when people are comparing documents.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Councillor Mayling's thinking that it worked last time. How would we know? How would we know? I mean, any paper we send out will work because people will vote and then someone will count the votes up. But in terms of understanding that it worked somehow, I'm not quite grasping.
I'm not sure anyone's ever going to know whether there's a major impact of the way that the names are. I mean, there'll be views and opinions and
through the merit, it's a slightly strange concept that councils are asked to decide on this leading up to an election, but it is what it is.
Hey ho. Righto, it's been moved and seconded. I will put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Elaine, and that will be your last report. So, although I understand you are still going to play a role remotely in relation to the election process, so
yes.
Lucky you.
Yes, lucky me. I just wanted to take the opportunity, elected members that haven't responded to their confirmation of pecuniary interest summary, if you could do that, that will allow us to finish that piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Local Government Act Section 17A review policy, Amy Clark. Amy, welcome. You might be right, yeah. It could also make you wrong. How much is writing on it?
Thank you. It's quite timely for me that you've received the Community Facilities S17A review because this will be fresh in your mind. So under the LGA, we are required to review the cost effectiveness of current arrangements for meeting the needs of the community for local infrastructure, local public services, and the performance of regulatory functions. So we've identified that we don't have a consistent approach to ensuring compliance with this piece of legislation. So we are complying with it, but perhaps we don't have a way of communicating with all staff and making sure that everyone has done this in the right time frames. So what we'd like to do is implement a policy which sits alongside this legislation, and that will provide clarity and direction for staff on what they need to do, when they need to do it, and put in place some responsibilities for monitoring and reporting on compliance with the legislation. As included in this policy is an approval framework, and what this does is allows S17As, including the exemption from completing the S17A, which can be provided in certain circumstances, and it allows group managers and the CEO within their financial delegations to approve those. And it also asks for delegations to be for committees as well as council, so that these reports can go to those committees if they're within those delegations. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Open for questions. Councillor Mackenzie.
Look, I thank you so much for bringing this, because I'm a big fan of systematising within an organisation, and I think, you know, in my first term of council, I might be wrong here, but I don't remember seeing very many of these reviews come through at all, if any. And I really appreciate the way that we have actually started to get them done in the current term, but having a policy that actually gets embedded into our systems and processes and the way we work, I think it's really great. So look, I'm happy to move. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. So it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ellis. Any further questions? No. Thank you very much. As Councillor Mackenzie said, very comprehensive report, and I think it really assists by laying it out so clearly where the responsibilities lie, what the pathway is, and I guess but what it does highlight is there is almost endless processes and procedures, and when people look in, we have conversations about the cost and the cost of operation, the cost of governance, the cost of running the council. It's all of these things, as worthwhile, beneficial and important as they are, that add up to all of that cost, and then subsequently the people to undertake it. So yeah, I guess it's a timely reminder of the environment in which we operate. So thanks, Amy. Next up, nominating councils. Oh, sorry, did I not? All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Mike, Local Government Funding Agencies nominating councils. That's on page 166. Anything to add to the written information, Mike?
Just through, Mr. Mayor, this is a regular report to council. It comes to every 3 to 5 years as council's seat on the LGFA Shareholders Council comes round for renewal. This will be voted on at the LGFA AGM in November. We have been a member of the LGFA Shareholders Council, so I've been a nominating council since the LGFA was formed in 2012. And as council's CFO, I take an active role on the LGFA Council. I am happy to bring the paper to you and to recommend that you remain on the council. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Moved Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Mailing. Are there any questions that people have?
I still do have a question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So, Mike, just at 2.2, I'm a little unclear. That talks about the retiring councils, ourselves, Christchurch and New Plymouth. So is the 2 councils retiring or 3?
So the arrangements require 2 councils to retire, and it's done on the councils that have been on the LGFA Shareholders Council for the longest term since they were last appointed. Just happens that this year, 2 councils roll around. So whether it is Christchurch or New Plymouth will be decided by lot.
Okay, thank you. And just so I support the resolution.
Thank you.
It was a good decision making.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Bryan. Is there anything further? No, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Next up, we have Chief Executive's report. Leonie, over to this page 219.
Kia ora. I'm just going to put a couple of comments. Then at number 3, about the representation review, I'm pretty sure you're aware we've had one appellant to the High Court. I think that will take a bit of time to go through, but just so that you're aware of that. Lagoima numbers for April around 50, but you can go to that link and you can also see how we're actively publicising information that we think have got public interest, and also previous Lagoimas we think actually this is something we can put out to the public so that would reduce the number of inquiries. I do understand that last year we had statistics that we were the 3rd highest in the country in terms of Lagoima. We were behind Wellington and Christchurch. We're small council, so we've actually had to put an extra staff member into that space to help out with the workload. Also, just a couple of things I've been up to, but I'm sure there'll be some questions around the staff numbers. As you'll see, they are 416 at March 2025. I'd also like to point out at the top table, 368 of those are full-time, 26 actually are fixed terms. Some of those are finishing soon, but some of those actually have come in to do the significant amount of work we've had to do around local water's done well, our CRM and DIP program, controlled services have come in-house, so of course that's affected the FTE number, etc. So these staff are certainly here to do to make sure we deliver on all our responsibilities. And I would also like to say that any reduction from this at the moment will put a serious risk to service delivery and compliance. We have indicated through the annual PM process that we are looking at a staff cost reduction. I believe we can do that reduction and still deliver on our responsibilities. But I believe any further cuts to that would actually put us at risk. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. Just one question from me in terms of the High Court process. Is that a cost to us? But that is the local government commission decision that is being, so it doesn't involve us. Okay. Is there any implications around elections, etc., etc.?
In terms of timing, no indications have been provided yet. We're following up with the Commission.
Thank you. Anything further? If not, I'll put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye. Me and Stuart. Next up, we have the Mayor's report. What's up now? It wasn't up before. We now have the Mayor's report, so I'll take it as read. There's nothing I specifically need to add to, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. I guess, as Leonie has indicated, there's been a lot of work, and local water done well, despite where we've ended up, and it'll be interesting to see what the feedback is in terms of the consultation. There's been a huge amount of work that's gone in behind the scenes to work with our neighbouring councils, form up the information that we've received to make our decision on the preferred option to go out for consultation. It's interesting that across the top of the south, we've kind of got the full suite now of options being considered by different councils. So ourselves and Nelson are in-house. Marlborough, I think, is single CCO, Buller joint CCO with balance of the West Coast. So there's the full suite of options being considered by different communities in the top of the south, and it will be interesting to see when that arrives, where everyone finally arrives at, and secondly, where DIA go when they receive whatever we will finally decide on. So other than that, I think it's all reasonably self-explanatory. So I'm happy to take questions and/or anything else anyone would like to ask. I've got Councillor Greening and Councillor Mailing.
Thanks. My question was just in relation to the previous report, which knew pretty quickly before you noticed my hand was up. Just in relation to 5.3, I've said enough through the annual plan process and other meetings about the FTE count, but it was always a concern, as I raised before last time, that we had a previous report where the management group were trying to keep numbers under 401, I think it was, and then suddenly we're up to 416. My question, though, is in relation to 5.3, which is the regulatory process being brought in-house. Will the council be looking to test orders before it fully commits to taking that in? Appreciate we've been doing it on an interim basis and been giving contractors a very short lease, which is never useful for contractors to have because they tend to hemorrhage staff. So will we be tendering that out to get market response? Because I'm aware that there are some people who are interested in tendering, and if it saves us 200k, we should do it.
I'm happy to answer that through the chair. Look, the control services contract, the person was retiring. This actually isn't a necessary and attractive contract, and to try and keep it, as you say, 200k saving, we may well have spent more. We didn't have anyone come to us through that process around whether we bring it in-house or not. Not aware of anyone who put a significant proposal. We didn't necessarily go to market, I don't believe, but actually there was a significant risk for us to have waited. I also like to point out, from my experience, a lot of regulatory services are run through councils because actually it's quite a difficult service to run as a contractor. You can have parts of that, but actually like an animal control and dog shelter, I do know some council that does that, but you've also got to have the right person. The right person who also reflects this organisation's culture, and that's a real challenge. So I believe that actually bringing it in-house will save us long-term in terms of the culture of the organisation, that service, and also be able to provide more oversight of what's been happening, because we certainly know there have been complaints through around our previous contractors. So I am sure that Kim in his role will no doubt at some point do a proper 17A, and we may well have a look at it then. But from my experience, very difficult to get someone to run a service like that externally. But if you know of people, then send their names through. Thank you.
Well, I think it'll be useful to actually just tender it out so those people can put their tender in, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't explore that.
We already did that. Yeah, through the procurement process. Yeah.
Well, my understanding was that
you've done a 17A. Sorry. I'm just getting some calls from the back of the room. We have done a 17A, and it did come up that actually in-house was the better delivery model. Thanks, Kim.
So currently, Mark, I'll come back to you. So the people are now employed. It has been bought in-house. So can you just explain exactly what the status currently is of the provision of that service, and when the next time, the next council and the next LTP will clearly have an opportunity to relook at everything, including this particular service. Yeah. So where do we sit right now in terms of the relationship between the staff employment and the contract?
Sure. Through the Mayor. So the first step that we took was through the Environmental Regulatory Committee to make sure that we stood the service up, and then we had fixed term contracts taking us through until the 30th of June. While we're in that phase, we have initiated a 17A review, and that's been reported back to Council, and Council have agreed to bring the service in-house. So from 1 July onwards, the service will be formally in-house for the full-time employees, and we're currently just commencing a recruitment process to fill the roles of the staff that are involved.
Yeah, thank you. And so clearly the next council will, as they always do, have the opportunity to relook at the provision of service and make whatever decisions they choose to make down the track. Which may include relooking at the option of contracting out this or any other range of services that the new council may wish to consider.
Yep. So I'm suggesting that given 30th June is a while away, we put out a tender to see if there is interest and at what price, because I think there will be people out there who have certainly expressed interest to me in the process. And I think when we did our 17A review, the suggestion was there was no one else out there. Actually, there are some people out there who are interested in doing it.
So if they were, they should have made that clear at the point we did the 17A review. So my understanding
it wasn't tendered. It was just recontracting an existing provider on a very short lease. So he was losing.
The council resolution, I presume, is a council resolution post the section 17A review.
Oh, look,
just wait. To confirm the in-house option, and that is effectively what the council staff have worked on or under to date.
Yes, I appreciate the 17 review. I was there at the time. I read the report. I voted on it. What I'm saying is that there is information that has come after that event, after that review, which suggests there are people interested, and that in that review it was suggested there weren't. So what I'm suggesting is we have an opportunity to save 200,000 if we put it out for tender.
That's a massive assumption, because
it's not, because I've spoken to people who are interested in doing it, and they've indicated they will do it for the same price.
Well, I think part of the problem is, I don't know how widely you have shared these people's names and their indications, but the appropriate process would have been to direct them to certainly Leonie/Kim, so they could have those conversations.
The appropriate process is to tender it out rather than have private discussions so that it's publicly tendered for.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
So what I'm suggesting is, it would be really good.
I know what you're suggesting, Mark.
Right,
Thank you. So I'm very clear what you're suggesting.
200,000?
But you're not going to be able to do that under my report or Leonie's report. That would have to be a subsequent council resolution with an associated report to it. That's how council resolutions get done. So if the council wishes the council staff to come back with a report, a tender process, to go through that process, that is for the council to decide. So I'm very clear what your perspective is on this.
Yes, so
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mick. I'll be really brief. So I just wanted some reassurance, Kim, that if we've currently got a contractor doing a good job and the temporary thing, that they won't be excluded and be forced to become a employee, is there some options for you to navigate in terms of different parts of our district? Because I understand we've currently got a temporary contract as a contractor in Motueka. I'd hate to see him go because the Noi Council is doing a good job by forcing him to become an employee.
Through the chair on that one, we have the flexibility to fulfil. So our purpose is to provide an effective and efficient service. But while we have the ability to recruit to full-time positions, if other opportunities present, and obviously how individuals are performing in their current role in the gap-filling space, that will be taken into account in our decision-making. The other point to add, just to pick up, we did commit to a formal review 2 years down the track of how successful the current arrangement is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dakey.
Well, I'll comment on that and then I'll go move to a question here. Nelson City Council went through the same process with air control services just before us, went to tender, and I don't believe there was anything in there that came off it, and they wasted time and it didn't achieve anything. So there was that also was in our report that in fact going to market wasn't going to produce some magical company that could do it for way less. If there was, Nelson would have probably had a tender for it. My question is for the Mayor. In 3.6, yourself and Mayor Smith met with the hospital governance group. Just as a district, obviously Nelson's talked about it's the Nelson Hospital, Nelson, but obviously Tasman is we're the majority population now. Have we done everything we can to support as we come up to budget with the government setting their budget and what they're looking at? Have we done enough to advocate? I don't have visibility of that. Is there anything extra we can do to say, look, our residents are very concerned about the state of the hospital, the staffing and the future. Is there anything more we can do or what have we been doing?
I think there's always more we can do. Like if the council wishes me to write more formally to the ministers concerned, based on the more recent information that's come out over actually not just the hospital buildings, which has been the focus of attention for some considerable time, but the provision of service, employment, etc. I'm more than happy to do that on behalf of council formally. But there's a lot of conversation going on. A lot of it is led out of Nelson. The opportunity was really to look at the building component of it. It wasn't a broader conversation about the provision of health services, although clearly there's been an awful lot of feedback from the community into that process. So look, I'm happy to formalise on behalf of the council our concerns over both the building to ensure that something happens. It is a bit akin to the conversations I think about the other major capital project the government's looking at here. Is there's the kind of previous proposals that were the very the complete kind of rebuild option in inverted commas, through to now something that is more incremental, focused on specific needs, immediate needs with subsequent consideration. I think it's definitely it's more likely to get something happening through that as it is with the roading issue. We haven't taken a formal position as a council on which of those options is preferred. It's probably not our place to say, other than to make it very clear that the feedback we've received from our community is that both the building and the staffing considerations need to be given the utmost consideration. So I'm happy to formalise that.
Yeah, I would support that, because I think if you look at our population combined with Nelson, we're almost getting up around the Dunedin sort of size of population together. I'm not sure Wellington always remembers that. That might be the nice way of saying it. So yeah, I would support that. I think the community is concerned about this, and I think anything we can do that might just help tip the scales in our favour just a little bit would be beneficial. So thank you.
I think the other thing that's come out of those conversations is there's the hospital component, there's the primary health component, which is probably at least as important to our community in terms of some of those more dispersed services, and the consideration, at least as they go through reviewing both staffing and buildings, how much can be done in other locations. Because if you look around, there is a lot of investment in health services. A lot of it's private through GPs and health centres, but the capability or possibility of the utilisation of that whole network for the provision of some services may well both be a better outcome for communities, but also help offset the challenges they face investment in the one big facility. There's always some things you can't do elsewhere, obviously. So I think incorporating that consideration over the primary health network alongside the kind of hospital-based provision is really important as well. Thank you, Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thanks. I support what Councillor Dakey is saying, and I think that well, Nelson Marlborough is quite isolated. It's a secondary level hospital, and it has to it's got Cook Strait to the north, and then a lot of distance to Christchurch to the south, and so it is in a difficult position. Plus, it's actually got this huge rural area. So I would support some representations from Tasman District being made, because it's very easy for Tasman to actually be invisible. Nelson is an urban area in the main, and I think it's important that we emphasise the huge rural area for Tasman. So yeah, I totally agree, and I think that that would be a good thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mailing.
Just quickly, you mentioned local water's done well and what's been happening here. My understanding is that DIA have indicated that the minimum numbers should be around 180,000 people to make it cost effective to do 3 water as well. And we, along with Marlborough and Nelson, seem to have gone totally against that. And the poor old West Coast is just not big enough. So that your understanding as well?
Oh gosh, there's been so many figures bandied around. I'm not sure DIA have, certainly the previous minister had a view of what the minimal number was in terms of efficient delivery of the service, which was in that ballpark, 180, 200,000. I'm not sure that's a DIA position. DIA have staked out some positions and opinions in relation to the funding of depreciation and other things as well. I think one of the reasons we arrived at the decision we did was because of some of the quirks in the way the legislation is written around debt and revenue, which didn't provide a very clear financial incentive to shift to a council-controlled organisation with the potential costs. We're yet to see what the costs of an in-house option fully look like, because no one's constructed one under this legislation previously. So I think all I can say is, yes, there's been some direction. It will be interesting to see when all of the proposals land at DIA, and then ultimately, obviously, to ministers, whether they still hold those views, and if they do, whether they approve the 3 different models that are being proposed between Nelson, Marlborough and Tasman. I guess we just have to wait and see. Well, first we have to wait and see what the community feedback on our proposal is. So it's a big case of wait and see, unfortunately. If there's nothing further, I'll move my report be received. Seconded, Councillor Mailing. I'll put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And I think that concludes, annual planning consultation document. I should not have jumped over that. So that's been received under separate cover. So has everyone got that to hand? Amy and Chris, if you'd like to. Okay, so happy for you to add any comments or feedback you have or detail before I open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kia ora koutou. So last week at your 30th April meeting, you agreed to the proposed budget changes and to consult on the proposed annual plan 2025-26 because the changes to the long-term plan are material. We've prepared an annual plan consultation document for your review today. It presents the approach that Council has taken to responding to the challenges and the 15 bundles of key changes we propose to make to our budgets and service delivery models to reduce the impact of a higher rates increase. We're inviting feedback from the community on whether they support our approach to achieving the proposed 8.8% rates revenue for 2025-26 or on any of the 15 proposals. The consultation document also contains information on the introduction of limited paid parking for commuters within the Richmond CBD. And we're proposing to run this consultation concurrently with the annual plan with a separate shaped Tasman page. If you adopt the consultation document today, the consultation period will run for 2 weeks from next Monday, the 12th of May. There will be no hearing, but we will run an online session next Thursday, 15th of May, which provides an opportunity for the community to hear directly from the Mayor and Chief Executive and for people to provide their verbal feedback. The annual plan consultation will be publicised in Newsline next week, newspaper advertising and through social media. There will be the usual hard copies of the CD available at our service centres and libraries, and people can also provide feedback via the Shape Tasman page. We will directly contact iwi and identified interested or affected parties, as well as Nelson City Council and the industrial water users affected by the water charge in the Nelson industrial water supply area. Our deliberations will be on the 4th of June and all feedback will be presented for your consideration. The Chief Financial Officer has advised you on changes regarding the market value of Council's ETS credits. I'll hand over to Mike to explain how this relates to the annual plan. If he wants to speak to that.
Right. I think you've largely covered that.
Covered it off earlier.
Yeah. So if there's questions of mine, but I don't think you need to add anything at this moment post your previous reports to the meeting today. So, but if there are questions, it'll be useful for you to be able to.
There's no impact in relation to consultation on the annual plan.
Okay, thank you. So I've got Councillor Butler and Councillor Hill and Councillor Mayling. I've got a list.
Oh, sorry, is my hand still up? No, I didn't have a question.
Councillor Hill.
Oh, thank you. Through you, Chair. I can see I'm looking a bit dark. It's so sunny and bright and hot over here to put my blinds down, so sorry about that. But looking at the consultation document, I think it's really well done. I just think it's really well laid out. Language is readable and easy to understand. I think the layout and use of colour is really good. But I particularly like the explanations of each aspect that we're presenting and saying, this is how come, this is how, why not. So and I really like it when the information we send out is just accessible in that way. So it's just a little tip of my hat to those that have pulled that together. Thank you.
Are you happy to move, Councillor Hill?
I certainly am. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Mayling, Councillor Ellis, Councillor Kinnemont.
Yep, I'm happy to second, and I can only support those words from Councillor Hill. When I went through this document, I thought it clearly showed some of the choices we've had to make in relation to cost savings and the difficulties that you face. And if you look at it, most of it is in the infrastructure and 3 water space is where the costs are. And I've made this comment lately. If you look at what's ahead of New Zealand in terms of wastewater and other things, it's just so expensive. And our organisation, Te Mana Aotearoa, seems to have a different view about how you pay for these things. And that is something this country is going to have to face going forward. But we could have clearly showed the choices that have had to be made, and it'll be interesting to see the feedback we get, because nobody likes to see rates go up this level.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Ellison, Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you. I have to reiterate the points that have already been made by the previous 2 councillors. I just have a very quick question. Oh, I hate to be so pedantic. But on page 11, it's got under roading and public transport a budget increase of $200,000 to improve service levels on street litter bins and town centre landscaping. My impression is that it's to maintain, not improve. So I'd hate to set a level of service that was that people were expecting more in the area. So I just want to confirm whether that wording is the most appropriate. But other than that, I really like the layout and the way that we've really clearly shown where the changes are.
Thank you through the chair. So that's in relation to bundle 5 on page 11. the budget reductions for footpath and cycle path maintenance?
No, above that, it's the second paragraph under section 5. Budget increases of 200,000 to improve streets levels for street litter bins and town centre landscaping.
Through the chair, yeah, it's basically to maintain a reduced level of what we currently deliver. You're correct, and we'll make sure we get that thing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you, through the chair. A couple of, I've already expressed my opinions to Leonie and others. Short time frame for the submission. I know personally I'm going to get into the neck from community associations who don't meet in this period between the 12th and the 25th of May. So councillors are going to have to make sure that we get to our community associations well in advance of that. And I know tonight I'm going to get to the neck from Motueka Valley. They probably like hard copies. Are we going to do hard copies this year? That's a yes.
Thank you. Yes, we will be providing hard copies.
Thank you.
If you're going tonight, assuming this resolution is passed, no.
Minor tweaks to it.
Okay, minor tweaks. You could take the draft, the one that's in the agenda, subject to minor tweaks, and at least explain or talk to it at the Motueka Valley meeting if you're attending it this evening.
Also refer to that you get a meeting with all of them.
Yeah, and to clarify, good point, Robin, yeah. So yesterday I met with the chairs of all the community associations, not all of whom turned up, but Mott Valley was. And so I've given them an overview based on the draft information. So issues like the rating freeze, the key drivers, etc. So they have already had that via me to the chairs at yesterday's meeting. So yeah, to assist with that time frame pressure. Robin.
Can I also add that I've been approached by the chair of the Mapua Community Association for hard copies to be put up in the village, which I've agreed to, and I will also be offering that to the other community association chairs.
Okay, thank you. Is that all, Councillor Kinnemont?
No, just so how proactive our chairs of our community associations are.
Well, it's a combination of the proactiveness of Robin and the willingness of the community association chairs to attend said meeting.
Thank you. Through the chair, can I just confirm that the calculator for people to go to, that will be live at the time that the document is made public? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Righto. Thank you very much. I guess. Sorry, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. So you, Mayor. So we're going out and we're going to get submissions in. We aren't doing a submissions hearing, but from what I read, we will be doing the deliberations as councillors on the 4th of June. That doesn't give a lot of time from when it finishes for you to get that data and information to us. Is the 4th of June in concrete, or so like if by some small miracle we got over 1,000 submissions, when would we start receiving those to actually digest what our community feedback is? If it closes on the 28th, then we're doing this on the 4th.
Thank you, through the chair. We will be managing submissions as they come in. If the numbers are particularly high, we can certainly feed those through to you as they come through. We are confident we can be ready for the 4th deliberations.
Okay, thank you. So I guess it's worth re-highlighting the challenge that this, absolutely take your point. And this is we've known this for a long time. Once you get with the process you have to go through to get to the point, like complete wholesale change is always going to be virtually impossible in the time frame we have. That's just the nature of the complexity of all the decisions and the interrelationship between all of the different sources of funding. So there are some key things that we'll be getting feedback on where there is the potential to make changes, but for a lot of it, that would be incredibly difficult. So hence the slightly more streamlined process for community interaction. Interestingly, in the conversation with the community association chairs, just highlighting the fact that there's two particular properties that come out which highlight where the big difference is. You've got two residential properties that have pretty similar value. One's in Mapua, which is not connected to water and wastewater, and I think its increase is 1.97. I think, just off the top of my head. Just about every other residential property is around 10 or 11, somewhere between 10 and 11. And that is driven by the connection to water and wastewater. So I think that is a key point of emphasis there, because there is a lot of commentary both from nationally that it's all about the nice to haves, and that's why councils' budgets are increasing and rate increases are. But I think that particular property comparison really shows that whether you're connected to water and wastewater, and this particular round of budget consideration is a big driver of where you sit on that continuum either side of 8.8. So no doubt that will come out through the conversation and process there. Righto. If there's nothing further, I will put the resolution to move and seconded. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And that draws us to the conclusion. I will close with karakia. Kia horo te marino, kia whakapapa panamu, te moana, aroha atu, aroha mai, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you, everybody.